I found the rivaroxaban hidden in my son's medicine cabinet on a Sunday afternoon in March. The prescription wasn't his, it was mine. Except I'd never been prescribed blood thinners in my life. I'm a retired cardiac surgical nurse. I know what rivaroxaban does to the human body. I know what 18 months of secret doses would do to a 65-year-old woman. I stood in Gregory's bathroom, holding that orange pill bottle, and understood with perfect clinical clarity that my own son had been poisoning me. Not quickly, not mercifully, slowly, methodically. Every Sunday dinner for a year and a half. The bruising I'd attributed to age. The dizziness I'd blamed on medication interactions. The weakness that made me consider early onset dementia. All of it calculated. All of it him. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't call the police. I walked downstairs, sat through dinner, smiled at my daughter-in-law Roxanne's fake concern, and went home. Then I made a single phone call that would destroy them both. But let me start from the beginning, before I knew what they were doing. I'm grateful you're here. Before we continue, would you leave a quick comment? Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Your presence truly matters. Quick note. Certain details in this story are fictionalized for storytelling and reflection. But the heart of it, the message, is what I hope stays with you. My son called on a Tuesday morning with news that would unravel everything I thought I knew about family. I am Bernice Stone, 65 years old, a widow of 3 years who spent 30 years as head nurse in cardiac surgery before the people I trusted most tried to erase me. I was standing in my Charleston kitchen, watching winter light play across the coastal water through my window, when Gregory's name lit up my phone screen. "Mom, we're settled in Savannah now," he said, airport noise echoing behind his voice. "We moved last week. It all happened so fast. We forgot to mention it." Forgot. The word landed like a scalpel on steel. Forgot to mention moving your wife and entire household across state lines. I kept my voice steady. The same tone I'd used in the surgical ward when a resident missed obvious symptoms. Gregory, my 40-year-old son, once a promising hospital administrator before his wife's gambling debts consumed him, laughed too easily. "You know how it is with the clinic expansion. Roxanne found this perfect building in Savannah's historic district. We had to move fast before someone else grabbed it." I listened to the gate announcements bleeding through his phone, cataloging the acoustic tells of someone speaking from a public terminal, not from a new home, not from an office, from an airport, calling his mother as an afterthought between connections. "You sound tired, Mom," he added, his tone shifting to manufactured concern. "Are you feeling okay?" "We just thought a fresh start would be good for the family." There it was, the redirect, the subtle suggestion that my reaction indicated weakness rather than his profound disrespect. In 30 years of cardiac nursing, I'd learned to read vital signs that others missed. Gregory's vocal patterns showed the same arrhythmia as a failing heart irregular, compensating, hiding damage beneath apparent function. My training kicked in automatically, transforming shock into clinical observation. Elevated speech rate anxiety, defensive phrasing guilt, premature concern for my health, projection or preparation for future gaslighting. "I'm fine," I said. "Catalina must be excited about the new school." "She'll adjust. Kids are resilient." How does a mother forget her son is erasing her from his life? She doesn't. She catalogs it like symptoms in a differential diagnosis, building toward an answer she doesn't want to find. "Well, congratulations on the expansion," I said, my voice carrying the same pleasant neutrality I'd used to calm panicking family members in surgical waiting rooms. "Send me the address. I'd love to see the new clinic." "Of course. Listen, I have to board. I'll call you next week, okay? Safe flight, Gregory." The line went dead before he could respond to his name. I'd called him Gregory instead of his childhood nickname, and he either didn't notice or didn't care enough to comment. I set the phone on the granite counter Thomas had installed this kitchen 5 years before the stroke took him, back when we thought we were building a home for grandchildren to visit, not a fortress I'd eventually defend alone. The winter sun caught the phone's dark screen, reflecting my face back at me, still sharp-eyed despite the silver hair. Still the woman who'd held beating hearts in her hands and known exactly how fragile life could be. The magnitude of the disrespect hit me like a failed cardiac rhythm sudden. Arrhythmic. Diagnostic. My only son had relocated his entire family without a conversation, announced it casually from an airport terminal, and immediately questioned my mental clarity when I'd pointed out the obvious. I walked to my desk in the study Thomas used to occupy. From the locked drawer, I removed the leather medical journal I'd kept hidden for 3 weeks. I opened to the latest entry, dated this morning, and added one more observation in precise clinical notation. Subject reports family relocation. Timeline discrepancy noted. Gaslighting language pattern consistent with previous 14 documented interactions. 3 weeks of documented symptoms, and my son had no idea I'd been tracking evidence the entire time. The journal's first entry was dated 3 weeks ago, January 5, 2026. Dizziness upon standing, confusion during routine tasks. Pattern recognition suggests external causation. 14 entries followed, each more damning than the last. But the real evidence trail started 5 months earlier, before I knew I was collecting it. 5 months ago. I believed I was securing my family's future when I wrote that check. August 2025. Summer evening in my Charleston living room, candlelight reflecting off the coastal photographs Thomas had loved. Roxanne, my 37-year-old daughter-in-law, with her practiced tears and manicured desperation, sat across from me, holding a tissue, voice trembling with what I'd mistaken for vulnerable honesty. "We want the clinic here in Charleston," she said, leaning forward with Gregory's hand supportive on her shoulder. "So close you can walk over any morning and watch your grandchild grow up with us. Every day, Mom, not just holidays and video calls." The promise landed exactly where she'd aimed it, the grandmother-shaped hole in my heart. "The commercial space requires $4.8 million up front," Gregory added, his tone apologetic but firm. "But we're building this as your legacy too, the Stone Family Clinic. Your grandchild will grow up seeing what you and Dad built together." I remember Roxanne dabbing at her eyes, the tissue-catching mascara that never quite smudged. "I know it's a large amount, but we want to do this right, near family, near you." I wrote the check that night. $4.8 million from the coastal resort property Thomas had left me, converted to liquid assets to fund what I believed was my son's dream. Roxanne hugged me with trembling gratitude. Gregory kissed my forehead and promised weekly dinners once the clinic opened. They were gone within the hour. Check secured, leaving me alone with empty wine glasses and the warm certainty that I'd made the right choice. That memory tastes like ash now, bitter and false in my mouth. I closed the journal and walked down the hallway to my home office, the room Thomas had designed with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the water, where he'd managed the resort properties that funded our retirement. The afternoon sun cut harsh angles across the mahogany desk. The file cabinet sat against the east wall, its digital lock requiring both fingerprint and 6-digit code. I'd installed it 3 years ago to protect critical documents, medical power of attorney, updated will, trust documentation, insurance policies, everything a widow needed to keep secure. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. Green light. I entered the code Roxanne had helped me set up last November, when she'd offered to organize my paperwork during a visit I'd thought was daughterly concern. The lock clicked open. I pulled the top drawer. Empty. Completely empty. Second drawer, nothing. Third drawer, bare metal and the faint smell of old paper where documents used to rest. Fourth drawer yielded the same absence, a perfect void where my entire legal identity had lived. My hands didn't shake. 30 years of cardiac surgery had trained that reflex out of me, but my pulse hammered against my wrists with diagnostic clarity. This wasn't random theft. This was surgical extraction, planned and executed by someone who knew exactly what they were taking and when I'd be too confused to notice. The digital lock code was shared only with Roxanne. 6 weeks ago, she'd sat in this exact chair, organizing documents into color-coded folders, asking gentle questions about my estate planning. "Just so I know where things are if you ever need help, Mom," she'd said with that concerned smile. "You know how scattered Gregory can be." I'd given her the code. The fingerprint scanner was mine alone. But she could have bypassed it with the emergency override key I kept in my bedroom nightstand, the location I'd mentioned during that same organizational session. My phone vibrated against the desk surface. A text alert from my primary bank, security notification regarding unauthorized address change request. I stared at the glowing screen, watching my entire financial identity begin to shift across state lines. They weren't just taking my documents, they were already moving to take everything. The bank alert glowed on my phone screen. Unauthorized request to change primary account mailing address from Charleston, South Carolina to 847 Whitaker Street, Savannah, Georgia. Effective immediately. Contact customer service to confirm or dispute. I did not call the bank's fraud department. I did what 30 years in cardiac surgery had trained me to do. I documented. Panic is a luxury medical professionals cannot afford. When a patient codes during surgery, you don't scream or freeze. You assess, you record, you build the evidentiary timeline that will either save their life or explain their death. My family was attempting to kill me financially, possibly literally. The appropriate response was clinical observation, not emotional collapse. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing with the same systematic precision I'd once used for surgical notes. Timestamp 4:17 p.m., January 26, 2026. Event: unauthorized banking address change request. Location correlation matches Gregory's new Savannah residence. Timeline significance occurs same day as surprise relocation announcement and document theft discovery. Pattern assessment, coordinated financial fraud in progress. My fingers moved across the keyboard with muscle memory from 3 decades of patient charting. In surgery, documentation isn't just record keeping. It's the difference between malpractice and medicine, between chaos and accountability. Every incision logged, every complication noted, every decision justified in writing before the lawyers arrive. When does a mother become both patient and detective in her own attempted murder? I saved the document and returned to the medical journal I'd been keeping in my locked desk drawer. The leather binding was soft from weeks of handling, pages filled with entries in my tight surgical script. I flipped to the beginning. January 5th, 2026. Entry 1. 08:47 hours. Dizziness upon standing from breakfast table. Duration approximately 45 seconds. Severity 6 out of 10. Associated symptoms: mild nausea, visual darkening peripherally, no cardiac arrhythmia noted via self-assessment. Patient history: no previous incidents of this nature. Environmental factors: none identified. Medication review: only daily multivitamin, fish oil, calcium supplement administered by daughter-in-law R. Stone. The entries continued, each more detailed than the last. January 7th, dizziness episode. Severity 7 out of 10. Occurred 2 hours post-vitamin administration. January 9th, speech. Difficulty during phone conversation with friend. Duration 3 minutes. Preceded by morning vitamin dose. January 12th, severe confusion during routine grocery shopping. Unable to recall reason for trip. Symptoms began 90 minutes after vitamin. 21 entries spanning 3 weeks, every episode timed with clinical precision, every symptom scored on standard medical scales. Every correlation noted. I'd cross-referenced each incident with my calendar. Roxanne had visited 18 of those 21 days, always arriving around breakfast time with cheerful concern and my daily vitamins in her perfectly manicured hand. "You need to keep your strength up, Mom," she'd say, watching until I swallowed each capsule. The correlation was undeniable, clinical, damning. On days Roxanne didn't visit, I experienced minimal symptoms. On days she administered the vitamins personally, I documented episodes within hours. The pattern recognition that had helped me identify failing hearts during surgery now revealed something far more personal: systematic pharmaceutical manipulation. I turned to my most recent entry, written this morning before Gregory's call. January 26, 2026, 07:30 hours. Daughter-in-law, R. Stone administered daily supplements. 09:45 hours onset. Dizziness. Severity, 8 out of 10. Confusion regarding time of day. difficulty maintaining balance. 10:30 hours, symptoms subsiding. Pharmaceutical analysis conclusion, substance in supplements causing documented neurological impairment, evidence threshold reached. Next action, external medical verification required. 3 weeks of documented symptoms in precise medical notation. Every episode timed, measured, cross-referenced with Roxanne's visits and her insistent daily vitamins. Before my daughter-in-law realized it. A cardiac surgical nurse with 30 years of experience already had enough clinical data to charge her. They thought they were poisoning a confused elderly woman. They were creating evidence against themselves under the observation of a trained medical investigator. The medical evidence was damning, but it only captured the final 3 weeks. The poisoning had started 4 months before I recognized it for what it was. September 2025, late afternoon in my coastal garden, the air thick with salt and the last heat of summer. I was deadheading roses when the world tilted sideways without warning. My knees hit the brick path, hands catching myself against warm stone as vertigo rolled through my inner ear like a failing gyroscope. Roxanne found me there 10 minutes later, still sitting on the garden path with dirt on my palms. "Mom, how long have you been down here?" Her concern sounded genuine then, or perhaps I simply wanted it to be. "Just a dizzy spell, low blood pressure, probably. At your age, with your cardiac history, that's not something to dismiss."
She helped me inside, her grip firm on my elbow.
"I'm calling our family doctor." The next morning, she arrived with a small amber bottle. "I found a wonderful family doctor in Savannah who specializes in cardiac patients," she said, setting the vitamins on my kitchen counter with practiced care. "He said these imported supplements would be perfect for someone with your background. High-potency compounds designed for post-surgical cardiac health." I picked up the bottle, studying the professional label with European pharmaceutical markings I couldn't quite read. "What's the formulation?" "Proprietary blend. CoQ10 magnesium, specialized amino acids." She opened the bottle and shook 2 capsules into my palm. "Take them with breakfast every day. You'll feel the difference in a few weeks." The first capsule left a bitter metallic taste coating my tongue, sharp enough to make me reach for water. "They have an unusual taste," I said, swallowing the second one. "That bitterness means the compound is pharmaceutical grade, very potent." Roxanne smiled, watching me drain the glass. "You'll feel the difference in a few weeks." One who had spent 3 decades reading cardiac rhythms missed the fatal arrhythmia in my own daughter-in-law's performance. The weeks that followed blurred together in hindsight, September bleeding into October, then November. Each month marking another degree of calculated deterioration. Roxanne visited 3, sometimes 4 times a week, always arriving near breakfast with cheerful energy and my daily vitamins in her perfectly organized pill case. "I don't want you to forget," she'd say, producing the amber bottle from her purse. "Consistency is crucial for efficacy." The dizziness came more frequently. Confusion crept into simple tasks, forgetting why I'd opened the refrigerator, losing words mid-sentence during phone conversations. Standing in grocery aisles, unable to remember what I'd come to purchase. Each episode felt like my brain short-circuiting, synapses misfiring in patterns that made no neurological sense. And Roxanne was always there with her phone, capturing what she called precious family moments. "Hold on, let me get this on video," she'd say, as I struggled to remember a neighbor's name. "You look adorable when you're trying to remember things." I can't seem to find the right word for," I'd trail off, the sentence dissolving before I could complete it. "It's perfectly normal at your age, Mom." Her voice carried the patient condescension reserved for children and the elderly. These little moments are precious memories for the family. Her phone lens was a scalpel, precisely cutting away my competence frame by frame. Now, reviewing those months with clinical hindsight, the pattern screamed its evidence. Every video she'd texted to Gregory showed me stumbling, confused, searching for words that evaporated mid-thought. Not once in 3 months did she film me laughing at a joke, cooking a successful meal, or speaking clearly about my garden. Every recording captured only my failures reaching for a coffee cup and knocking it over, standing in my own kitchen, uncertain which cabinet held the plates. Calling her Rebecca instead of Roxanne. She wasn't preserving family memories, she was manufacturing evidence of dementia that didn't exist. But someone else was watching too. Someone who recognized what was happening before I did. Someone saw the poisoning before I recognized it myself. November 2025, 6 weeks into the vitamin regimen. Mid-afternoon, while I was reviewing grocery receipts at my kitchen table, the phone rang from an unknown number, 703 area code, Virginia. Bernice Stone. The male voice carried professional authority, vaguely familiar in the way voices from long-past medical conferences sometimes are. Listen carefully. Check what your daughter-in-law has been giving you daily. My pen stopped mid-calculation. Who is this? How do you know my... Your husband taught me to recognize when medical care becomes harm. His accent was faint, possibly British, certainly educated. Examine what she's administering. The symptoms you're experiencing aren't age-related. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, replaying those 20 seconds. Your husband taught me. Someone who'd known Thomas professionally. Someone who'd learned from him, which meant medical training, probably surgical, given Thomas's specialty in cardiac care. Someone who was watching my deterioration closely enough to connect it to Roxanne's daily vitamin routine. The call lasted less than half a minute, but it planted a seed that would grow into systematic investigation. I'd tried calling the number back immediately. It rang 4 times before disconnecting. No voicemail, no recording. I tried twice more over the following week. Nothing. The caller had delivered his warning and vanished. Who watches the watchers when the victim doesn't yet know she needs watching? That question haunted me through December as I began noticing patterns I'd previously dismissed as aging. The dizziness always peaked 2 to 3 hours after vitamin consumption. The confusion episodes clustered on days Roxanne visited to ensure I took my supplements. The speech difficulties emerged most prominently when she was present with her phone recording, as if my symptoms performed on cue for her camera. By Christmas, I'd started keeping my crude documentation, nothing as systematic as my current medical journal. Just notes on my phone about when symptoms occurred and what preceded them. The anonymous caller's warning echoed through every entry. Now, sitting in my Charleston home office on this January afternoon with 3 weeks of proper clinical documentation complete, stolen legal papers, an unauthorized banking address change, and Gregory's casual announcement of his secret relocation. The pieces assembled themselves with surgical precision. The November warning call wasn't random concern. It was specific intelligence from someone monitoring my situation who recognized pharmaceutical manipulation before I did. Someone connected to my late husband's medical circle who understood both the symptoms of poisoning and the personality of the day. Daughter-in-law administering it. I was done being a patient. Time to become the clinician investigating my own case. The medical journal provided 3 weeks of documented evidence, but documentation without laboratory confirmation was just narrative. I needed blood work, comprehensive toxicology screening, chemical analysis of whatever Roxanne had been feeding me, disguised as cardiac health supplements. But I couldn't walk into my regular doctor's office requesting poison screening without triggering questions. And exactly the kind of official involvement that would alert Gregory and Roxanne before I'd gathered enough evidence to prosecute. If they learned I suspected them, they'd disappear, along with any proof of what they'd done. I needed someone who understood discretion, someone who valued old loyalty over bureaucratic procedure, someone who could run a full blood panel off the official record and wouldn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer publicly. I pulled out my phone and opened contacts to N. Nora Patterson, Senior Lab Technician, Charleston Medical Center, my colleague through 30 years of cardiac surgeries. The woman who'd held my hand through Thomas's funeral and never once suggested I was too old to live alone in this coastal house. 32 years of friendship, absolute discretion. If anyone could run comprehensive blood work without leaving electronic footprints, she could. The anonymous caller had given me the question, now I needed the laboratory proof. Walking through Charleston Medical Center's doors felt like coming home to investigate my own attempted murder. The familiar smell of antiseptic and floor polish hit me as I entered the main lobby. For 37 years, these hallways had been my second home. I'd walk to them in scrubs at 5 a.m., exhausted after 18-hour shifts, hands still trembling from the adrenaline of keeping hearts beating on operating tables. Now I was back as a patient, seeking answers about why my own son might be trying to stop mine. I kept my head down as I approached the elevator bank. Several former colleagues still worked here, and I couldn't risk anyone mentioning they'd seen me. Gregory and Roxanne had no idea I was investigating them. That element of surprise was my only advantage. The laboratory was on the second floor, tucked away in the building's east wing. I'd called ahead using the prepaid phone, and Nora Patterson had agreed to meet me at 7:15 a.m. before the morning rush began. She was waiting outside Lab Room 3 when I arrived, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in the same tight bun she'd worn for 20 years. We'd worked together on dozens of post-operative patients, developing the kind of wordless trust that comes from shared life-or-death situations. "Bernice," she said quietly, glancing down the empty hallway. "Come in." The small lab room was sterile and private. Nora had already prepared the collection tubes, labels conspicuously blank. "You're sure about this?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. "Off-record toxicology screening isn't something I do lightly." "I'm sure," I said, rolling up my sleeve. "If I'm wrong, no one ever needs to know. But if I'm right, if you're right, you're going to need more than lab results." Nora interrupted. She tied the tourniquet around my arm with practiced efficiency. "You're going to need a lawyer, a safe place to stay, and probably police protection." I watched the needle slip into my vein, dark red blood flowing into the first tube. One step at a time. "First, I need to know what's actually in my system." Nora filled 6 tubes total, labeling each with a code only she would recognize. "I'm running a comprehensive heavy metal panel, common pharmaceutical toxins, and anything that might explain your symptoms. The neurological issues, the muscle weakness, the cognitive fog, those could indicate several different substances." "How long?" I asked. 48 hours, she said, applying a bandage to my arm. "I have to send these to a private lab in Atlanta. A colleague who owes me favors and won't ask questions." 48 hours. 2 days of pretending everything was normal while I waited to learn if my own child was poisoning me. "What do I do in the meantime?" I asked. Nora's expression hardened with the same determination I'd seen when she fought to save patients everyone else had given up on. "You document everything. Every meal they prepare, every vitamin they give you, every symptom you experience. Dates, times, witnesses if possible. If these results come back positive, you'll need a pattern of evidence, not just a single blood test." She handed me a small notebook from her desk drawer. "Write it all down. And Bernice, don't eat or drink anything you haven't prepared yourself or obtained from a sealed package. Nothing they've touched." I took the notebook, its blank pages waiting to record the evidence of my son's betrayal. "Thank you, Nora." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I'm praying these results come back clean and you're just dealing with normal aging symptoms. But if they don't..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I left the hospital through the emergency department exit, avoiding the main lobby. The morning sun was bright against my eyes as I walked to my car, the notebook heavy in my purse. 48 hours until I would know if the bitter taste in those vitamins was merely unpleasant or legally poisonous. That evening, I gave my first deliberate performance as a confused elderly woman. The notebook Nora had given me sat hidden in my bedroom drawer, already containing detailed notes about the morning's blood test. Now I had a different kind of documentation to conduct. My phone rang at 7 o'clock sharp, exactly as scheduled. Gregory's face filled the screen, Roxanne leaning into frame beside him, both smiling with the practiced warmth of concerned family members. "Hi, Mom," Gregory said. "How are you feeling today?" I let my eyes unfocus slightly, tilted my head as if struggling to concentrate. "Oh, hello, sweetheart. What day is it again? I keep losing track. Thursday. No, that can't be right." Gregory's expression shifted into gentle patience.
"It's Thursday. Mom, these little memory slips are completely normal at your age."
Normal. The word they'd been using for months to explain away symptoms they'd been deliberately creating. Of course, I said, adding a small laugh that sounded uncertain even to my own ears. Thursday. I don't know where my mind goes sometimes. Roxanne leaned closer, her voice honey-sweet with concern. You sound exhausted. Are you remembering to take your vitamins? You need to rest more. The vitamins. The bitter tablets I'd been pretending to swallow for the past 3 days while actually hiding them in a sealed bag as evidence. I took them this morning, I said, deliberately stumbling over the words. Or was it yesterday morning? I wrote it down somewhere. I watched their faces with the same clinical precision I'd once used to monitor vital signs during surgery. Gregory's concern appeared genuine, but Roxanne's eyes held something else, a flash of satisfaction, quickly masked. A predator watching prey weaken, right on schedule. They had no idea I was observing them with equal calculation. I was both actor and audience, performing dementia while documenting their eager consumption of my fabricated decline. Every reaction, every careful word of false concern, every barely concealed moment of anticipation, all of it was data I was collecting for the case I was building. Mom, maybe you should write things down, Gregory suggested. Keep a daily log of your medications, your meals, how you're feeling. It might help you stay oriented. How thoughtful, how caring, how perfectly designed to create a written record of cognitive decline that would later support their inevitable claim that I'd become mentally incompetent. That's a good idea, I said, letting my hand shake slightly as I adjusted the phone. The tremor was real enough, not from neurological damage, but from the effort of controlling my fury while playing the role they expected. We worry about you being alone in that big house, Roxanne said. Have you thought any more about our offer? We could find you a lovely assisted living community somewhere with medical staff. Social activities, people your own age. Somewhere they could control my medication completely. Somewhere I'd have no privacy to investigate. No ability to document evidence. No escape when they decided to accelerate the timeline. I'm not ready for that, I said, making my voice sound querulous and uncertain. This is my home. Your father and I paused, as if forgetting my train of thought. What was I saying? It's okay, Mom, Gregory said softly. As he shifted position, the camera angle widened slightly. Behind him, I caught a clear view of his background. Not the modest temporary rental office they'd described. The space behind Gregory was all sleek glass panels, brushed chrome fixtures, modern recessed lighting. A high-end medical clinic. Professional and expensive. Another lie. Another piece of the puzzle. Who was truly being observed in this clinical study of deception? You should rest, Roxanne said. We'll call again this weekend to check on you. That would be nice, I murmured. I do get lonely sometimes. I forget things. I let my voice trail off weakly, fumbled with the phone screen, played my role to perfection. Roxanne's smile was warm honey over cold steel. We were both performing flawlessly. The difference was, only I knew which play we were actually in. 48 hours later. I sat across from Nora Patterson in her small office at Charleston Medical Center. Study the lab results that would transform my suspicions into prosecutable evidence. The numbers on the lab report didn't lie, but they told a story I hadn't quite expected, one that required expertise I'd left behind 30 years ago. Nora's finger traced a highlighted line on the printout, her jaw tightening. Your INR is 7.2 Bernice. Anything over 3.5 is dangerous. At this level, a minor fall could cause internal bleeding. INR, International Normalized Ratio, the measurement of how long blood takes to clot. I knew these numbers the way a pianist knows scales. But I'm not taking blood thinners, I said quietly. Dr. Morrison never prescribed any. That's what concerns me. Nora set down the report and looked directly at me. This isn't accidental. Someone's been dosing you with pharmaceutical-grade anticoagulants. The words hung in the air between us. Clinical and damning. Medical proof of attempted murder. What kind specifically, I asked. Rivaroxaban, high dose, the kind we use post-cardiac surgery to prevent clots. My hand stilled on the printout. Rivaroxaban. I'd administered that drug hundreds of times in the cardiac ICU. Carefully calculated to keep freshly operated hearts from throwing clots while avoiding hemorrhage. The dosage protocols were precise, exacting, designed for patients under constant medical supervision. How much? I asked. Nora consulted a second page. Based on your blood levels, I'd estimate 15 to 20 milligrams daily. For the past several weeks, possibly longer. I remembered standing in surgical scrubs, calculating anticoagulant protocols for post-op patients. The dosage patterns were precise, clinical, designed to walk the razor edge between clot prevention and hemorrhage risk. You didn't guess at these numbers. You didn't eyeball the dose. Every milligram mattered. Whoever was poisoning me knew exactly what they were doing. The symptoms match, I said, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. The dizziness, the fatigue, the easy bruising I thought was just aging. I've been walking around for weeks as a stroke or hemorrhage waiting to happen. The muscle weakness, the cognitive fog, those are consistent with chronic anticoagulant toxicity, Nora confirmed. Your brain wasn't getting optimal oxygen because your blood chemistry was critically compromised. I studied the report with the clinical detachment I'd learned in operating rooms. The evidence was irrefutable. My daughter-in-law, the pharmaceutical sales representative with access to prescription medications, had been systematically poisoning me with cardiac drugs. But something didn't fit. That requires specialist authorization, I said slowly. Nora nodded. Exactly. Your family doctor couldn't prescribe this even if he wanted to. Rivaroxaban at these doses requires a cardiologist or neurologist's direct authorization. The implications settled over me like ice water. This wasn't just Roxanne stealing samples from her pharmaceutical company. This was a prescription that had to be written, authorized, processed through legitimate medical channels. They weren't just trying to make me confused and dizzy. They were creating a medical time bomb one fall. One bump and I'd bleed internally. The perfect accident waiting to happen. And they'd convinced a medical specialist to provide the weapon. Who prescribed this? I asked. That's what we need to find out, Nora said grimly. I can trace prescription records, but it'll take time and I'll need to be careful. If there's a doctor involved, they'll have covered their tracks. I need copies of everything, I said. The blood work, your analysis, the dosage calculations, dated and signed. You're building a case. I'm building a prosecution. Nora began making copies, the machine humming in the quiet office. Outside the closed door. Hospital life continued, voices in hallways, equipment beeping, the familiar rhythms of medical care. Somewhere in this same system, a corrupt physician had signed off on my murder. I was folding the lab results into my purse when my phone buzzed. Catalina. My 17-year-old granddaughter never called during school hours. Grandma. Her voice was urgent, barely above a whisper. I need to see you. Today. Don't tell Mom or Dad, please. The line went dead before I could answer. I texted back immediately. Where and when? Her response? Your back door, 4 p.m. Usual signal. 3 soft knocks on my back door at 4:17 p.m. Our old signal from when Catalina was small and wanted to sneak cookies before dinner. My 17-year-old granddaughter stood on the step looking over her shoulder, auburn hair and a messy ponytail. Those sharp eyes, so like my own, filled with worry. Catalina Marsh was a high school junior with her mother's coloring and her grandmother's instinct for trouble. I parked at the library, she said quickly, slipping inside. Mom can't know I'm here. What's wrong, sweetheart? I guided her to the kitchen table. Catalina dropped her volleyball bag. She'd skipped practice to come here. I heard them talking about you, about your medical stuff. It felt wrong. I kept my face calm, concerned grandmother instead of investigating victim. 3 nights ago, I came downstairs for water and they were in Dad's office. They didn't know I was there. She pulled out her phone. Dad said they needed your signature before March 15th, before some party. What party? I asked. I don't know. But Mom said, after the party, the timing won't matter anymore. Catalina looked up confusion and guilt in her expression. They were talking about medical records, power of attorney. I know you're getting older, and they're probably just trying to help, but the way they said it? She thought this was about estate planning, a pushy son managing his aging mother's affairs. She had no idea she was describing a murder timeline. What else did you hear? I write everything down. It helps me process. She turned her phone toward me, showing a diary entry from 3 days ago. My 17-year-old granddaughter had just handed me their entire timeline without knowing she'd given me anything at all. I read the neat handwriting. Dad, we need the POA signed before the 15th. Everything has to be in place. Mom, what if she won't sign? Dad, she will. She's already confused enough. We just need to time it right. Mom, and the medical records. Dad, Dr. Kendrick, will handle his part. Once we have POA, the rest is just timing. The party gives us cover. Can you send me this photo? I asked. Already did. I sent it before I got here, just in case I need proof I told someone. Smart girl, already documenting evidence without understanding what she was documenting. Grandma, are you okay? You look different. I pulled my expression back to soft concern. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just processing. You said March 15th. Yeah, that's Nana and Papa's 40th anniversary party. Mom's been planning it for months. The whole family's coming. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. The whole family. Witnesses. March 15th, 5 weeks away. They weren't planning a quiet accident in my home. They were staging something public, surrounded by family, where dozens of people would witness their concern, their devotion, their grief when their elderly mother suffered a tragic medical emergency at a crowded celebration. The perfect cover. Does this help? Catalina asked anxiously. They're probably just being weird about paperwork. You did exactly right, I said firmly. Always trust your instincts. Catalina. I hugged her goodbye at the back door, watched her disappear toward the library. Then I pulled out my phone and studied the photo she'd sent, her careful handwriting, documenting her parents' conspiracy. My son's voice, recorded in his daughter's innocent diary. Once we have POA, the rest is just timing. The party gives us cover. They were planning it for an audience. After Catalina left, I stood in my kitchen staring at the diary photo on my phone. They needed documents signed, which meant they were looking for documents I'd already signed or planning to forge ones I hadn't. My late husband's office had always smelled like leather and old paper, but tonight it smelled like evidence. I pulled Thomas's heavy oak desk away from the wall, ran my fingers along the baseboard until I found the hidden panel. It had been 4 years since he'd shown me this, explaining in his careful engineer's way that redundant systems weren't paranoia, just good design. Always the careful one, weren't you, Thomas? I whispered. The panel popped open, revealing a small digital recorder and backup security system he'd installed without telling Gregory. The main security system was newer, visible, controllable from my phone. This one was invisible. Hardwired. Recording to encrypted storage. I powered it on, holding my breath. Please still be recording. The screen flickered to life, showing a menu of archived footage organized by date. My hands were steady as I scrolled backward through recent entries. February 9th, 3 days ago. The same night Catalina had overheard them talking. The same night she'd written in her diary about their whispered conspiracy. I selected the file and pressed play. The office appeared on screen in night vision green, empty and still. The timestamp read 12:47 a.m. I'd been unconscious by 10 that night, knocked out by whatever dose of anticoagulant Roxanne had hidden in my dinner. Then the door opened. Gregory entered first, phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. Roxanne followed, closing the door silently behind them. They moved with practiced efficiency. No hesitation, no discussion needed. They'd done this before. Gregory went straight to the file cabinet along the far wall. He knew exactly where to look. I watched my son Jimmy open the locked drawer with a thin piece of metal, his movements quick and professional. Where had he learned that Roxanne stood guard by the door, her phone out, ready to photograph whatever they found? There they were, my son and his wife, moving through my home like burglars while I lay drugged unconscious 1 floor above them. Gregory pulled files systematically, spreading them across the desk. His phone camera flashed repeatedly, documenting pages I couldn't see clearly on the grainy footage. Financial records, based on the folder labels. Legal documents. Medical files. Roxanne moved closer, pointing at specific pages. They were searching for something particular, cross-referencing between files. "What are you looking for, Gregory?" I murmured to the screen. I turned up the audio volume, hoping the hidden microphones had captured their voices. Static hissed through the speakers. Then Gregory's voice came through, distant but audible.
"What if she wakes up?"
My stomach clenched. Then I heard Roxanne's voice, crystal clear through the speakers. "The security system is off. I disabled it from her phone."
Her tone was casual, confident, completely unconcerned.
"At the dose I gave her tonight, she won't remember anything anyway." The dose I gave her tonight. Not the medication or her vitamins, the dose. Clinical, deliberate, personal. Roxanne wasn't just providing the poison. She was administering it herself, calculating dosages, timing the effects to ensure I'd be unconscious while they ransacked my files. I replayed the section 3 times, recording it with my phone as backup. Roxanne's voice, preserved in digital clarity, confessing to drugging me. The timestamp proving they'd broken into my office while I was incapacitated. The footage showing them photographing confidential documents. Evidence. Concrete. Time-stamped. Audio-visual evidence. I saved the file to 3 separate drives, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Roxanne's voice played on loop in my mind. "At the dose I gave her tonight, she won't remember anything anyway." But I would remember, and now I had proof they'd been in my files. Searching for something specific enough to risk midnight break-ins, I needed to know what they'd photographed, what documents mattered so much they'd drug me to access them. I called Desmond Griffin at 7:30 a.m. before his secretary arrived. By 9 o'clock, I was sitting across from him in his downtown office with printed screenshots of the surveillance footage and Catalina's diary photo, spread across his mahogany desk. Desmond Griffin's face had gone the particular shade of gray that only comes from discovering your client has been legally robbed. At 62, Desmond had handled Thomas's business for 3 decades and knew every dollar of the family fortune as well as I did. He'd walked me through estate planning after Thomas died, ensuring everything was properly protected, or so we'd thought. "I need you to tell me if any power of attorney documents have been filed in my name," I said. Desmond's fingers were already moving across his keyboard. "Give me a moment. I'm checking the county records now." I watched his screen reflect in his reading glasses. Watched his expression shift from professional calm to alarm. "Bernice, when did you sign a medical power of attorney?" "I didn't." He turned the monitor toward me. There it was, filed with the Charleston County Clerk on January 3, 2026. A medical power of attorney granting Gregory Stone full authority over my healthcare and financial decisions in the event of incapacity. My signature sat at the bottom of the page, notarized and official. "I never signed this," I said quietly. "I've never even seen it." Desmond zoomed in on the document. "The notary stamp is real. County clerk accepted it January 3rd. January 3rd, 6 weeks ago. They'd been executing this fraud for over a month. They forged my signature and found a corrupt notary," I said. Desmond was already opening another window, cross-referencing the POA against recent financial transactions. His jaw tightened. "What?" I asked. "There's a loan against the Kiowa property, $18 million. The words hit like a physical blow. "Thomas left me that resort. It's been in his family for 40 years. Desmond pulled up the loan documents, his face hardening with each page. They used the POA to pledge it as collateral. The loan was approved February 1st, funds transferred to an LLC registered in Gregory's name. My husband had spent 30 years building that resort from a rundown beach motel into Charleston's premier coastal property, and my son had signed it away in a single forged document." "What LLC?" I asked. Desmond clicked through corporate records. "Stone Family Holdings, registered in Delaware. And the loan terms..." His expression told me everything before he spoke. If you're declared legally incapacitated or die, control of the collateralized assets transfers to the LLC. Gregory becomes the authorized managing member. The complete picture crystallized with brutal clarity. The poisoning wasn't just about making me confused or dependent. The anticoagulants were creating a medical time bomb, a stroke, a fall, internal bleeding that would either kill me or incapacitate me enough to trigger the POA provisions. Once I was declared incompetent or dead, Gregory would control the coastal resort worth over $20 million. Plus the $18 million in loan funds he'd already stolen. $18 million. Secured 2 weeks ago. The March 15th deadline, I said. They need me either dead or completely incapacitated before then. Something about that party timeline matters. Desmond was scrolling through loan documentation. The first payment is due March 20th. If they wait too long to execute their plan, they'll have to make payments from their own funds. The whole scheme collapses if you're alive and competent when the bill comes due. How much have they actually stolen? The $18 million is real money, already transferred, but the property itself is worth more, if they can claim incapacity or inheritance. They get everything. Desmond was already pulling up corporate records, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The LLC was registered in Delaware 3 months ago, he said quietly. Bernice, this wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. I leaned forward to see the screen, and there it was. Stone Family Holdings, LLC, registered October 2025. 4 months before they started poisoning me. 4 months of planning. 4 months of laying groundwork before the first dose of poison, before the first forged signature. Why wasn't Gregory's name on any of the ownership documents? I asked. Desmond looked up from his screen, confused. What do you mean? You said the LLC was registered to Gregory, but I'm looking at this corporate filing, and I don't see his name anywhere in the ownership structure. Desmond pulled the documents back toward himself, scanning more carefully. His expression shifted. Your son has signature authority, but zero ownership stake in the LLC. The words hung in the air between us, reconfiguring everything I thought I understood. Then who owns it? I asked. I need to trace through 3 shell companies to find out. Desmond's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Delaware corporate records, then Georgia, then back to South Carolina. This is deliberately obscured, multiple layers designed to hide the beneficial owner. I watched him work, my medical training kicking in with the same systematic approach I'd used to trace blood flow through damaged cardiac systems. Follow the path, find the source. Desmond opened a 4th window, cross-referencing registered agent names against tax identification numbers. Here, the chain resolves through a Georgia holding company called Palmetto Ventures, which lists. He stopped. What? The beneficial owner is Roxanne, 100% equity. I leaned forward. Gregory doesn't own any of it. Not a single share. He's an employee at best, an accomplice at worst. Desmond pulled up the ownership documentation showing the complete corporate structure. Every shell company, every layer of obfuscation, all leading back to a single name, Roxanne Marie Stone. My son wasn't the snake in my garden. He was just another victim in her orchard. Useful until he wasn't. She structured this to exclude him completely, I said. It's actually brilliant in a terrible way. Desmond highlighted sections of the corporate documents. If anything goes wrong, if there's an investigation or legal challenge, Gregory has signature authority on the fraud, but no legal claim to the assets. He takes the criminal liability while she keeps the money. What money specifically? I asked. Where did the loan funds go? Desmond opened a new search window, this time looking at recent property transactions. Let me check commercial real estate purchases in the past month. High value, all cash. He found it within seconds. She bought a property in Savannah, $4.2 million, all cash. He turned the screen toward me. A historic commercial building in Savannah's downtown district, purchased February 3rd. The deed listed a single owner, Palmetto Ventures, LLC, Roxanne's shell company. Roxanne's name only. $4.2 million. Roxanne's name only. With my money, I said quietly, secured against my resort. She's not stealing for your son, Bernice. She's stealing from him, too. The pieces were rearranging themselves into a completely different picture. I'd assumed Gregory was the driving force, that his weakness and greed had corrupted him into poisoning his own mother. But Roxanne had orchestrated everything: the LLC formation, the forged POA, the loan against my property, the poison that would either kill me or incapacitate me enough to trigger the legal mechanism she'd put in place. Gregory was just another mark, another tool, another victim positioned to take the fall when the scheme inevitably came to light. She'd been playing him from the moment they met, playing me from the moment she married into the family. And she'd structured her theft so carefully that even when discovered, she'd walk away clean, while Gregory faced fraud charges. Does he know, I asked, that he doesn't own any of it? I doubt it. Most people don't read the fine print on LLC operating agreements. He probably thinks they're partners. They're not partners. No, he's a signature and a scapegoat. I sat back in the leather chair, pieces clicking into place with terrible clarity. Gregory had always been weak, easily led, desperate for approval. Roxanne had been playing him from the beginning, just like she'd been playing me. The difference was, I could see the board now. Desmond, I said quietly, I need you to find out everything about Roxanne's life before she married my son. Desmond nodded and reached for his phone. I left with more questions than answers, but at least now I knew which questions to ask. The burner phone in my glove compartment rang while I was stopped at a red light on King Street. Only Nora had this number. I'd bought it specifically for evidence communication without leaving traces. I answered on the fourth ring. Hello? Mrs. Stone, you need to pull over for this conversation. A man's voice, unfamiliar, faint British accent. Who is this? How did you get this number? A mutual friend who wants you alive. Pull over, now. I signaled right and found parking on a side street. I'm parked, I said. Good. My name is Stuart Blanchard. I'm a financial investigator, and I've been tracking your daughter-in-law's activities for 6 months. Why? Because someone hired me to document her debts. Those debts explain everything about her timeline. I gripped the steering wheel. What debts? Your daughter-in-law has a gambling problem, $620,000 deep. The number hit like a physical blow. Offshore gambling syndicate. Stuart continued, clinical and matter-of-fact. Accumulated over 18 months through online poker and sports betting. She wins enough to keep playing, loses catastrophically enough to owe this much. That's why she needs the money by March 15th, I said. The syndicate doesn't negotiate extensions. They sent enforcers to her gym last week as a reminder. Enforcers. Criminal syndicates. My daughter-in-law wasn't just stealing from family. She was running from violent debt collectors. She structured the LLC to hide assets from them. And from your son. The syndicate knows about Gregory, about you, about the family fortune. If she can't pay by March 15th, they'll come after everyone connected to her, including her daughter, Catalina. Roxanne wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting her child from the consequences of her addiction. How do you hate someone who's trying to murder you out of terror rather than greed? The syndicate has her on video at their poker tables. Documentation of every bet and loss, Stuart said. She can't run from this. So she decided to kill me instead. She decided to solve the problem the only way she could see. Your estate would cover the debt and leave enough for her to disappear with Catalina. Start over where the syndicate can't find them. $620,000, due in 4 weeks. Roxanne wasn't playing for luxury. She was in a vice, squeezed between my inheritance and violent criminals, with her daughter's safety in the balance. She's not greedy, Mrs. Stone. She's drowning. That doesn't excuse poisoning me, I said, my voice hard. No, but it explains why she's desperate enough to try. I watched traffic pass. Normal people living normal lives. Unaware that 2 blocks away, a woman was learning her would-be murderer was also a victim. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you need to understand what you're really up against. This isn't just family drama. There are professional criminals watching, waiting to see if Roxanne delivers. If she fails, they'll come after the family anyway. Exactly. Who hired you to investigate her? Static crackled. Someone who cares about the outcome more than you realize. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give right now. Watch your back, Mrs. Stone. And understand that when March 15th arrives, you won't be the only one in danger. The line went dead. I sat in the car, phone still pressed to my ear, watching Charleston traffic flow past. Stuart Blanchard had given me Roxanne's motive, her timeline, her desperation. But he'd never explained who hired him, how he got Nora's burner number, or why he wanted me alive badly enough to risk exposure. I called Nora that night to ask about the burner phone number, but she had no idea how anyone else could have gotten it. Stuart Blanchard remained a mystery I couldn't solve. Desmond had the prescription authorization on his screen when I walked into his office the next morning, and his expression told me we'd found our corrupt doctor. The prescription came from a Dr. Cedric Padilla in Savannah, neurologist. I sat down. Processing. I've never been to Savannah for medical care. Never heard that name. He authorized a 6-month supply of high-dose anticoagulants for a patient he's never examined. Desmond turned the monitor toward me, showing the electronic prescription record filed using my forged medical power of attorney. Dr. Cedric Padilla, 53 years old according to his medical license. A Savannah neurologist who'd sold his professional ethics for reasons I was about to understand. How did Roxanne find him? I asked. Desmond clicked to a new window. My investigator dug into Padilla's finances. Bernice, he owes the same gambling syndicate as Roxanne. $280,000. The pieces locked together with terrible precision. They're connected through debt, I said. More than that, his balance dropped by half the week he wrote your prescription. Someone paid him off. The same syndicate held them both, Roxanne drowning in debt. Doctor, Padilla treading water, and me as the designated corpse to solve everyone's problems. Desmond pulled up bank records, tracing payment flows with the methodical precision of a prosecutor building a case. Here, February 1st, the day the loan against your resort cleared. Stone Family Holdings, LLC, paid $420,000 to a consulting firm called Coastal Medical Advisory. Let me guess, I said. That consulting firm doesn't actually exist. Oh, it exists. Registered in Delaware. Same shell company structure as everything else Roxanne controls. But here's where it gets interesting. He highlighted a series of transactions. Coastal Medical Advisory transferred funds the same day, $140,000 to Dr. Padilla personally. Another $140,000 to pay down his gambling debt. And the remaining $140,000 vanished into cryptocurrency, probably payment to the syndicate for facilitating the introduction between Roxanne and Padilla. $420,000 of my money, buying my death. She used my own money to bribe the doctor who's helping kill me, I said quietly. Desmond nodded, his face grim. It's a complete circle. She forged the POA, used it to secure a loan against your property, paid part of those stolen funds to bribe a corrupt doctor into prescribing the poison that would either kill you or incapacitate you. Enough to trigger the POA provisions, giving her permanent control of your assets, which she'd then liquidate to pay the syndicate. Exactly. We have the complete chain now. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, bank records, prescription records, the surveillance footage from your office, Catalina's diary documentation, Nora's blood test results. Desmond pulled up a final document, a timeline he'd constructed, showing every element of Roxanne's scheme, from the LLC registration in October through the planned March 15th deadline. Every piece of evidence cross-referenced, dated, documented. This is prosecutable, he said. Multiple felonies with clear paper trails. The DA would take this case in a heartbeat. I studied the timeline. Seeing my son's signature on forged documents, seeing my granddaughter's innocent diary entries documenting her parents' conspiracy, seeing the prescription that had been slowly killing me for weeks. We could call the police right now, Desmond said, his hand hovering over the phone. fraud, forgery, attempted murder. We have everything. I looked at the evidence spread across his desk. The corporate trail, the bribed doctor, the gambling syndicate, the forged documents. All of it perfect. Prosecutable. And completely insufficient for what I needed. Not yet, I said. Why not? Desmond asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Because I need them to keep going, I said. I need them to commit every crime they've planned, document every lie, sign every fraudulent document. I need this airtight. Desmond's paralegal brought the court filing in at 8:47 p.m., and the words "emergency petition for guardianship" hit me like ice water. I read the first page, then the second. My hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. Gregory and Roxanne Stone petitioners, seeking emergency guardianship over Bernice Ann Stone on grounds of progressive dementia with acute confusion and inability to manage personal affairs. They filed for emergency guardianship based on progressive dementia with acute confusion, Desmond said, reading over my shoulder. I flipped to the medical documentation attached to the petition. The diagnosis is from Dr. Padilla, the corrupt neurologist. Of course it was. The same doctor they'd bribed with my stolen money to prescribe the poison now provided the fabricated diagnosis to justify legal control over my life. The petition included video evidence clips from their phone calls, showing me confused, disoriented, forgetting what day it was. Every moment carefully edited from when I'd been heavily drugged, performing the very confusion they'd been creating. The hearing is in 72 hours, Desmond said quietly, Friday morning at 9 a.m. If the judge grants it, they get legal control of everything. I studied the court schedule attached to the filing. Friday morning, 3 days from now. Friday, I repeated. What else is Friday? Desmond pulled up his calendar, then stopped. The clinic gala, Roxanne's medical center opening, Friday night. The hearing is Friday morning. The clinic gala is Friday night. They're timing it perfectly, Desmond said, the full scope clicking into place. Get guardianship, make the donation announcement in your name. Then I have my tragic fall at the party, surrounded by witnesses who just saw how confused I was. They'd built a perfect machine, each gear turning precisely. Every piece designed to transform my life into their fortune. The guardianship hearing would provide legal cover. The public donation would cement Roxanne's social standing and explain the financial movements. And the party would offer dozens of witnesses to my deteriorating condition moments before my fatal accident. Brilliant, thorough, almost admirable if it wasn't designed to kill me. The petition claims I've been declining for months, I said, scanning the supporting documents. Multiple incidents of confusion, memory loss, unsafe behavior, all fabricated or staged. They have character witnesses lined up, Desmond noted, pointing to the attachments. Neighbors who've noticed concerning changes, a pharmacy clerk who says you seemed confused picking up medications. Even a grocery store manager, either paid off or genuinely deceived by carefully staged incidents. Roxanne had been thorough. 72 hours, 3 days to build an airtight trap. We call the FBI tonight, Desmond said, reaching for his phone. Right now. This ends. No. I put my hand over his. Let them go to the hearing. Let them testify I'm incompetent. Desmond stared at me. Bernice, you want them to perjure themselves in court before we move? I asked calmly. I want every single crime documented with maximum legal weight. I want them standing in front of a judge, under oath, swearing I'm mentally incompetent while I'm sitting on proof of their attempted murder. I want Dr. Padilla's testimony entered into court records. I want their fabricated evidence officially filed. You're risking the judge actually granting guardianship. No, I'm ensuring that when this blows open, the prosecution has judicial perjury added to attempted murder, fraud, and forgery. Desmond leaned back, studying me with something that looked like concern. This is dangerous. So is letting them walk on technicalities because we moved too soon? He stared at me like I'd gone as cold as my son. Maybe I had. You're going to let them walk into that courtroom, he said slowly, testify under oath that you're mentally incompetent, sign fraudulent guardianship documents, all while you're sitting on evidence of their attempted murder. I smiled, and it felt like my husband's smile when he closed a business deal. I'm going to let them hang themselves with every rope they've been braiding for the last 6 months. Desmond spent the rest of that night building contingency plans. I spent it in Thomas's old office, searching through files I should have examined years ago. I slid the unmarked folder across Desmond's desk at 9 a.m. the next morning, watching confusion cross his face when he recognized Thomas's handwriting on the inside cover. "What is this?" he asked. "Legal Defense Fund, established March 2019. $2.8 million in protected assets." Desmond opened the folder, scanning the first page, then the second. His expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Thomas set this up 6 months before he died. You didn't handle it." "I've never seen this account," Desmond said slowly. "Who was the managing attorney?" "He used a firm in Atlanta. He wanted someone outside Charleston who didn't know our family." Desmond read further, his lawyer's mind processing the implications. "This is specifically designated for legal battles involving fraud or coercion attempts against you. Why didn't you mention this last night?" "Because I needed to verify it still existed first. I called Atlanta this morning. The fund is active, fully funded, and ready to deploy." Desmond flipped to the technical specifications and stopped. "Any transaction over $1 million requires your fingerprint and retinal scan, plus confirmation from the Atlanta attorneys that I initiated the request personally, in person or via secure video verification. Roxanne can steal your identity, your signature, your medical records, but she can't fake your biometrics." Exactly. My husband had been protecting me from beyond the grave, building walls they couldn't see until they tried to climb them. "This is a poison pill protocol," Desmond said, recognition dawning. "If you trigger it, what happens? Every account over $1 million freezes immediately. No withdrawals, no transfers, no transactions without my physical presence and biometric confirmation. The guardianship petition becomes legally meaningless because even with court authorization, they can't access the protected funds." "How much of your estate is protected under this system?" $24 million. Everything except the coastal resort, which is already collateralized by their fraudulent loan. Desmond sat back, reassessing everything. Why did Thomas build something this sophisticated? After the stroke, 3 of his partners tried exactly what Gregory and Roxanne are attempting. They filed for emergency conservatorship, claimed he was incapacitated, tried to vote him out of his own company and seize the resort holdings. Thomas beat them, destroyed them, sued for fraud, won, got criminal charges filed, 2 went to prison. Then he spent the next year making sure nobody could ever try it again. Thomas had turned our fortune into a fortress with locks that required living flesh to open. "This level of security architecture," Desmond said, studying the technical documentation. "This isn't something a standard estate attorney designs. Thomas hired specialists. Corporate security consultants from London. They understood family fraud, corporate espionage, identity theft at professional levels. The same people who would understand offshore gambling syndicates and how to track financial fraud across shell companies." I nodded. Thomas had been thorough. He'd experienced betrayal from trusted partners and built defenses that anticipated every angle of attack. "The biometric system went active the day Thomas died," I said. "Automatic trigger. I didn't even know it existed until I found this folder last night, but it's been protecting me all along. Roxanne has been stealing from accounts that were already locked. She just hasn't tried to access the major funds yet. The $18 million loan against the resort went through because the property itself isn't protected by the biometric system. But once she tries to liquidate the investment accounts, the stock portfolio, the trust funds, the whole thing freezes." Desmond turned to the signature page and stopped, his finger hovering over a name I'd almost forgotten. "The co-trustee on this fund," he said slowly, "is listed as Stuart Blanchard, Risk Management Consultant, London." The anonymous caller who'd warned me about Roxanne's gambling debts. The man with the encrypted phone and insider knowledge of offshore syndicates. He hadn't been investigating my daughter-in-law. He'd been protecting me all along. Stuart Blanchard had been protecting me for years, building defenses I hadn't known existed. But protection only worked if the enemy didn't know about it. I needed to keep performing. I practiced the confused elderly woman act in the bathroom mirror for 10 minutes before calling Gregory, making sure my eyes looked just unfocused enough. Not too dramatic, not so much they'd panic and accelerate their timeline. Just enough to reinforce what they already believed that I was declining. Manageable, nearly ready for their final move. I changed into a cardigan I'd worn 2 days ago, letting it hang slightly askew. Mussed my hair. Positioned myself in the living room where the afternoon light was dim and unflattering. Set out my pill bottles on the coffee table, labels facing the camera. Just confused enough, I murmured to myself, arranging the scene. Not so much they panic and move up the timeline. The pill bottles needed to be visible. Let them think I wasn't tracking my medications properly. Let them see exactly what they expected to see. Showtime. I called Gregory's cell phone, timing it for 3 p.m. when I knew they'd both be together at the clinic, supervising final preparations for the gala. He answered on the third ring, his face filling the screen. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "Gregory, honey, I need help with something." I let my voice waver slightly, picking up a utility bill from the coffee table. "The electric bill says, I don't understand these numbers anymore." I watched frustration flicker across his face. "Mom, just pay it online like always." "I tried, but the website looks different and I can't remember my password and—" Roxanne's face appeared beside Gregory's, her expression instantly shifting to false concern. "Bernice, sweetie, don't worry about bills right now. We'll handle everything after the gala." I was playing the confused old woman so well, I could see Roxanne's confidence blooming through the screen like poison flowers. After the gala, I let confusion cloud my expression. "The party at the clinic, is that soon? I can't remember when." "Friday night, Mom," Gregory said, his tone patient but strained. 3 days. Don't worry, we'll pick you up." "Friday," I fumbled with the bill, letting it slip from my fingers. I should write that down. What should I wear? I had a blue dress, but I can't remember where. "We'll help you get ready," Roxanne said smoothly. "In fact, we'll come by Friday morning to help you sign some documents first." Just routine estate planning updates. Estate planning updates. The lie slid from her mouth like silk over steel. Documents. I made my eyes widen slightly, anxious and uncertain. What kind of documents? "Nothing to worry about," Gregory said. "Just signatures. We'll explain everything when we get there." "Will it take long? I get so tired in the mornings now." 20 minutes, maybe, Roxanne assured me. "Then we'll help you get ready for the party. It's going to be a wonderful night. Bernice, the whole community will be there to celebrate the new clinic. 3 days, Friday morning documents, Friday night murder." "That sounds nice," I said, letting my voice trail off as if losing my train of thought. "The clinic. You worked so hard on it, Roxanne." "We all did," she said warmly. "And you're going to help us celebrate. Now don't worry about those bills. Just rest, take your vitamins, and we'll see you Friday morning." Vitamins. The ones she'd been poisoning me with for months. "Okay," I said softly. "Friday morning. I'll write it down." "Good. We love you, Mom." The screen went dark. I sat perfectly still in my staged disarray, staring at the blank phone. Roxanne had just confirmed their entire scheduled guardianship hearing Friday at 9 a.m., routine estate documents at my house at 11 a.m., clinic gala at 7 p.m. The documents they wanted me to sign weren't estate planning. They were the guardianship papers, and they planned to make me sign them in my own home before witnesses. They'd come to my home with fraudulent documents and witnesses expecting me to sign away my rights in my own living room. The audacity was almost impressive. The burner phone rang at 6:47 p.m., and this time, Stuart Blanchard didn't bother with the encrypted voice modulator. "Mrs. Stone," he said, his British accent clear and unfiltered. "No more encryption. You deserve to hear my real voice." I sat down at the kitchen table, gripping the phone. "You're the co-trustee on Thomas's defense fund." "I am, and I owe you an explanation for the secrecy. Start with why my husband trusted you with millions of dollars." "Thomas was my teacher," Stuart said quietly. Duke University Medical School, 1998. I was a surgical resident, and I made a mistake that wasn't my fault but looked damning on paper. A patient died. The family sued. Other residents doctored records to protect themselves and made me the scapegoat. I remembered Thomas mentioning a student he'd mentored through a difficult case. He'd never mentioned the name. "Thomas fought for you," I said. "More than that. He saved my medical career when I was 26 years old and facing fraudulent malpractice charges that would have destroyed me." He testified as an expert witness. Paid for my legal defense out of his own pocket and proved the falsified records. I was exonerated, but the experience changed you. I left medicine after what happened, became an investigator instead. If people could fake medical records to destroy a career, I wanted to be the one catching them. "Thomas hired you to protect his fortune," I said. "He hired me to protect you. The fortune was just the weapon we knew they'd use." Thomas had been dead 4 years, and he was still protecting me through the people he'd saved decades ago. "When did he contact you about the defensive fund?" I asked. "October 2018, right after his business partners tried to declare him incompetent following the stroke. He called me in London and said he needed the best fraud prevention system money could buy. We spent 6 months building it. The poison pill protocols, the biometric authentication, the shell company layers to protect assets. He knew someone would try this again. He knew family was the most dangerous threat, business partners you can fire. Family has access you can't revoke without destroying relationships." Gregory. Thomas had been trying to protect me from our own son without ever saying the words. "I've been tracking Roxanne since the LLC was registered," Stewart continued. "Every shell company, every fraudulent transaction, every gambling debt payment, building the case." "Case?" I asked carefully. "I have official authority here. Bernice, this isn't just personal anymore. You've been investigating Roxanne professionally. Her gambling syndicate has defrauded 14 insurance carriers across 6 countries. Your case is the prosecution we've been building toward. 14 victims, 6 countries. 8 months of investigation. They've been running the same scheme across multiple jurisdictions," Stewart explained. "Find wealthy targets with addiction vulnerabilities, extend massive credit, then offer solutions that involve insurance fraud, elder abuse, or both. Roxanne isn't their first recruited asset. She's just the one we can prove." "What happens Friday?" I asked. "When they arrive at your house with those guardianship documents, you won't be alone. I'll have 2 forensic accountants, a federal banking investigator, and documentation of every fraudulent transaction they've made in the last 6 months." I gripped the phone tighter. "And the gambling syndicate." His pause was loaded with meaning I didn't quite understand yet. "They'll be there too." "Why will the syndicate be there?" I asked. "Because Roxanne's deadline is Friday midnight," Stewart said, "and they always collect in person." We drove to Savannah that night. Dr. Cedric Padilla's face went white when he found Stewart Blanchard and me waiting in his Savannah Clinic exam room at 8:30 p.m. Stewart had picked the lock 20 minutes earlier. We'd positioned ourselves in the private office. His financial records spread across the desk in neat piles, organized by date and source. Bank statements, wire transfer receipts, shell company documentation, the complete paper trail of his bribe. Padilla froze in the doorway, keys still in his hand. He was 53, but looked older tonight, the stress of corruption aging him faster than time. "Dr. Padilla," Stewart said calmly, gesturing to the chair across the desk. "Please sit down. We have questions about your recent consulting income." "I'm calling the police," Padilla said, reaching for his phone. "I am the police, doctor, Insurance Fraud Division." Stewart laid his credentials on the desk. Official identification from 3 international insurance carriers authorizing. Investigative authority. And Mrs. Stone is the patient you prescribed lethal medications to without examination. Padilla's hand dropped. He looked at me, recognition and fear warring in his expression. "Sit," Stewart repeated. Padilla sat. Stewart slid the bank records toward him, highlighting the relevant lines with a red pen. $420,000 to prescribe medications to a woman you never met. Federal crime. Doctor. 20 years minimum sentence. I had debts, Padilla said, his voice barely above a whisper. They were going to kill me. The offshore gambling syndicate that also holds Roxanne Stone's debt, Stewart said. We know. We've been investigating them for 8 months. Your bribe money came from funds Mrs. Stone's daughter-in-law stole using forged legal documents. Watching him sign his confession, I felt the cold satisfaction of a trap closing perfectly and hated how much I'd become like the people trying to kill me. You have a choice, Stewart continued. Sign a notarized confession now, every detail, who paid you, when, why, or I call the FBI tonight and you're arrested by morning. The notary is waiting in the hallway. Padilla looked at the documents, then at me, then back at Stewart. If I sign, what happens? You testify against Roxanne Stone and the syndicate. You lose your medical license, but you avoid federal prison. And if I don't sign, I have enough evidence to convict you without your cooperation. The confession just makes it faster and gets you a deal. Padilla reached for the pen with a shaking hand. Stewart called the notary in a stern woman in her 60s who'd been waiting in her car. She witnessed Padilla's signature on 6 pages of detailed confession, stamped each page, and left without speaking. As Padilla slumped at his desk, I asked the question that had been burning since Stewart mentioned the Friday timeline. Why did she need the money so fast? Why this exact timeline? Padilla looked up, his face gray. The syndicate gave her until Friday midnight, after the party. If she doesn't pay the full amount by then, they kill her children first. Friday midnight. Kill her children first. How much? Stewart asked, though I knew he already knew. The same amount he'd told me on the burner phone weeks ago. Catalina, I said quietly. My granddaughter. She had no choice, Padilla said. She was going to murder you because someone was going to murder her. The words hung in the antiseptic air of the exam room. Stewart folded the notarized confession into his jacket pocket as Padilla slumped at his desk, head in his hands. I stood to leave, then turned back. The syndicate, I said quietly. When they come Friday night to collect from Roxanne, they don't know she won't have the money, do they? Dr. Padilla looked up, his face gray. No, she told them she'd have it all by midnight. She's been counting on your inheritance to save her children's lives. My granddaughter's life hung in the balance between Roxanne's desperation and my need for justice. We drove in silence for the first 20 miles, the confession burning a hole in Stewart's jacket pocket while I stared at the dark highway. Stewart finally broke the quiet, pulling up banking records on his tablet balanced against the steering wheel. I want you to see the complete picture. The screen showed transaction histories from an offshore platform called Victory Bet International. Hundreds of entries scrolling back 18 months. She started with sports betting, Stewart said, $500 at a time. I watched the numbers grow. 500 became 1,000. 1,000 became 5,000. Wins mixed with losses, but the losses always larger, the account balance climbing into territory that should have triggered alarm. When did it become 620,000? I asked. 18 months. She kept doubling down, trying to win it back. Classic gambling addiction spiral. Every loss convinced her the next bet would fix everything. The pattern was textbook. I'd seen it in patients' families. The desperate belief that one more try would reverse all the damage, erase all the debt, make everything right again. Victory Bet extended her credit because they knew she had access to wealth. Stewart continued. They researched targets carefully. Family connections, inheritance potential, asset vulnerability. They're not casino operators, they're sophisticated predators. How do you weigh your own life against your granddaughter's future? The Friday midnight deadline, I said. Tell me exactly what happens if she misses it. Stewart's jaw tightened. What does family pressure actually mean? They take the children, hold them until the debt is paid plus 50% penalty. It's not a metaphor, Bernice. It's kidnapping with a payment plan. Catalina, I whispered. They take Catalina. The syndicate gave Roxanne that final extension 6 weeks ago. Miss Friday midnight, and they proceed immediately to enforcement. They're already in Charleston. They've been watching your house. The clinic. Your granddaughter's school. They're prepared. Before I tell you the choice I had to make, are you still with me? Comment A if you'd expose them anyway. Or B if you'd protect Catalina. Add one short reason so I can see how you're thinking. A quick note. What comes next includes some details adapted for emotional impact to convey the core message and lesson. The lights of Charleston appeared on the horizon. My home, where Friday morning would bring either justice or catastrophe. If I proceed with Friday's confrontation, I said slowly, working through the brutal mathematics, Roxanne and Gregory both get arrested. Attempted murder, fraud, forgery. What are the sentences? Roxanne gets 20 years minimum, Stewart said. Gregory as accomplice, maybe 15. Federal crimes, no early parole. And Catalina, the question hung in the air. 17 years old, both parents in federal prison, grandmother dead. I stared at the highway lights blurring past. If I act now, I destroy her entire life. I'd spent 6 weeks building the perfect trap, and now I couldn't decide whether springing it would save Catalina or destroy her. But if I don't act, I continued, Roxanne might actually succeed in killing me. The syndicate takes Catalina anyway when Roxanne can't pay. Gregory goes to prison for murder instead of fraud. The outcome is worse for everyone. Unless, Stewart said quietly. Unless what? Unless there's a third option we haven't considered yet. Stewart pulled up to my house and cut the engine. The porch light was on, exactly as I'd left it hours ago. Everything looked normal, peaceful, safe. A lie. What do you want to do, Bernice? I looked at my home, the place where my son was planning to murder me, where my granddaughter still believed her parents loved her, where Friday morning a gambling syndicate would decide who lived and who became leverage. I don't know yet, I whispered. But I have 36 hours to choose between justice and mercy, and I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. I woke Thursday morning still uncertain which choice would save my granddaughter and which would destroy her. Catalina was waiting on my porch with her backpack and red eyes that said she'd been crying all night. Sweetheart, I said, opening the door, what's wrong? She stepped inside, shoulders shaking, and the words came tumbling out. I've been recording them. Grandma, I know I shouldn't have, but something felt wrong. I guided her to the kitchen table, my heart accelerating. How long? 2 weeks. Every conversation I could catch. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. I'm scared of what they're planning. Show me. Catalina scrolled through her phone's voice memo app. Dozens of files, each labeled with dates and times. She selected the most recent last night, 11:47 p.m. I heard them arguing in Dad's office, she whispered. I stood outside the door with my phone. She pressed play. Gregory's voice came through the small speaker, strained and unhappy. I don't want her in a facility. Roxanne. Just the paperwork to keep her from interfering. That's not how this works. Roxanne's voice, cold and sharp. The guardianship has to be real, or the courts won't approve the financial transfers. She's my mother. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Gregory. Not if you want to save your daughter from what's coming. My son's voice carried guilt and grief. He was a weak man, being driven by a ruthless woman to commit unthinkable acts against his own mother. The recording continued. What do you mean, what's coming? Gregory asked. I mean, the people I owe money to aren't patient, and they don't accept excuses. They know where Catalina goes to school. Gregory, they have her class schedule, her volleyball practice times, the route she drives home. Silence on the recording. Then Gregory's voice, barely audible. You used our daughter as collateral. I used our family as motivation for you to grow a spine. Roxanne's tone was ice. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoyed spending the last 6 months planning how to legally steal from your mother? I'm trying to save our child's life, And you're having moral qualms about paperwork. This isn't paperwork. Roxanne, this is fraud. This is elder abuse. This is survival. They sent me photos last week. Catalina at her locker. Catalina getting into her car. Catalina, alone in the school parking lot at 5:30 p.m. after volleyball. Photos of Catalina. Class schedule. Volleyball practice. Why didn't you tell me? Gregory's voice broke. Because you would have fallen apart, just like you're falling apart now. I needed you functional, not paralyzed with fear. So yes, I've been managing this alone. And tomorrow morning, you're going to do exactly what I tell you. Sign exactly what I tell you to sign. And say exactly what I tell you to say. Because if you don't, the syndicate doesn't wait for midnight Friday. They take her tomorrow afternoon. The recording ended. Catalina was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, what does that mean? What syndicate? Why are they talking about me like that? I pulled her into my arms. This brave girl who'd been recording evidence without understanding the danger she was documenting. It means your mother has been lying to all of us, I said quietly. And your father has been too afraid to stop her. Are they going to take me? No, I promise you, sweetheart, nobody is taking you anywhere. I copied the recording to a thumb drive and sealed it in an envelope marked Evidence Number 7, alongside the surveillance footage, bank records, and Dr. Padilla's confession. Catalina watched me file it in the safe. Grandma, she whispered, are they going to jail? I looked at my granddaughter, 17 years old, unknowingly photographed by the syndicate, used as leverage against her own father. I don't know yet, sweetheart, I said, but tomorrow morning, everything comes to light. After Catalina left, I sent her to stay with Nora Patterson where the syndicate couldn't find her. Then I called Stuart and Desmond. We had 2 days to finalize the trap. The conference table in Desmond's office looked like a war room. Evidence folders, financial charts, and timeline markers spread across 40 square feet of polished mahogany. Stuart stood at the head, pointing to a photograph of a distinguished man in his late 50s. Ulysses Bishop, Charleston real estate developer, 30 years of legitimate waterfront projects. He's offering a $22 million partnership in a new development. Gregory doesn't have $22 million, I said. He thinks he does. Stuart smiled grimly. He thinks he controls your accounts through the forged power of attorney. Bishop approached him last week about the investment prime waterfront property projected returns of 40% in 3 years. Gregory will see it as the perfect vehicle to legitimize the stolen funds, Desmond added. Exactly. Clean money, respectable partnership, massive returns. He plans to sign the contract Friday night at the gala. The contract requires immediate wire transfer to secure the deal before other investors can compete. I studied the timeline Stuart had drawn on the whiteboard. Walk me through Friday night. 8 p.m. Gregory signs the Bishop contract at the gala. 9 p.m. He attempts to wire the funds from your investment accounts to Bishop's escrow. 9:01. The poison pill triggers. Every account over $1 million freezes instantly. No transfer, no warning, just complete lockdown. And that's when every account freezes and the fraud investigators appear, I said. 200 witnesses watching Gregory Stone try to steal from his own mother in real time. Stuart's voice was cold satisfaction. We'd spent 6 weeks building a mousetrap so elegant it looked like a feast, and Friday night, Gregory would reach for the cheese. Simultaneously, Stuart continued. My team serves Roxanne with formal notification that Victory Bet International's Friday midnight deadline has been moved up to 9 p.m. Due to suspicion of fraud, she has to produce the full payment immediately or face enforcement. She can't, Desmond said. The money's frozen, and the syndicate representatives are already at the gala, watching her fail in front of Charleston society. What about Bishop, I asked. Does he know his investment is bait? No. The offer is completely legitimate. If Gregory had the money legally, the deal would proceed normally. Bishop simply became an unwitting partner by timing his approach perfectly. 200 witnesses, 0 escape routes. Desmond set down his pen, his expression troubled. This is too dangerous. Bernice, Catalina will be at that gala. The syndicate will be there. If they react violently, Catalina will be with Nora, I interrupted. Safe. And when the syndicate realizes Roxanne can't pay, when Gregory's fraud is exposed publicly, they won't just walk away. That's why Stewart's federal investigators will be present, I said calmly. Banking fraud, wire fraud, attempted theft. They arrest Gregory and Roxanne before the syndicate can act. You're gambling with your granddaughter's safety to make a public point, Desmond said, his voice rising. We could do this quietly. Prosecution, plea deals, witness protection if needed. You don't need the theater. My granddaughter deserves to see the truth in daylight, not hidden in plea bargain paperwork. I met his eyes steadily. She deserves to know her parents' crimes were exposed and punished publicly, not swept away in backroom deals. Bernice, we proceed Friday night. Let them believe they won right up until the accounts freeze. Stewart nodded. I'll have 8 federal agents in position. Banking investigators, insurance fraud specialists, and local law enforcement coordinated. The moment Gregory attempts the wire transfer, we move. Desmond closed the evidence folders with hands that shook slightly. 2 days, he said. 48 hours until you spring this trap with your granddaughter in the room and a gambling syndicate looking for money they won't get. I met his eyes. 2 days, I agreed. Let them believe they won. Let Gregory think he's finally secured his fortune. Let Roxanne think she's saved her children. Stewart smiled grimly. And then we take everything. 2 days vanished in preparation. Friday evening arrived with the weight of 6 weeks of planning compressed into the next 3 hours. The surveillance van smelled like coffee and electronics. Parked 300 yards from the Savannah Clinic, where my son was about to celebrate his greatest theft. Stewart adjusted directional microphones while monitoring 3 laptop screens. Desmond reviewed legal paperwork one final time. Audio feeds are live, Stewart said. We're getting clear pickup from the main reception area. The judge signed the emergency wiretap order 2 hours ago, Desmond confirmed. Everything we record is admissible. I watched through tinted windows as valets parked luxury cars, and guests in evening wear streamed toward the entrance. The banner stretched across the clinic's glass facade. Stone Aesthetic Center, grand opening, in gold letters. That's my money paying for those gold banners and champagne fountains, I said quietly. The clinic was stunning modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, professional landscaping. Roxanne had spent lavishly building her monument to successful fraud. Stewart pulled up financial records. Final accounting, $8.2 million in construction and equipment. Your coastal resort loan, liquidated investments, smaller fraudulent transactions over 6 months. Every penny stolen while they'd been slowly poisoning me. At 7 p.m., a sleek black Maserati pulled up to the valet stand. New Maserati, Stewart noted, purchased Wednesday for $240,000 cash. Gregory emerged in an expensive tuxedo, opening Roxanne's door. She stepped out in a floor-length emerald gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. She's wearing the necklace she bought with your coastal property loan, Stewart said, zooming a camera. $30,000. I was watching my son celebrate the fortune he'd stolen by trying to kill me, and all I felt was the ice-cold satisfaction of a perfectly laid trap. They greeted guests with confident smiles, playing the successful entrepreneurial couple. The audio feed crackled to life. Cost $8 million to build and equip. Roxanne's voice came through clearly. State-of-the-art technology, premium finishes. We spared no expense. No, they'd spared my expense. Every chandelier, every marble counter, every piece of equipment purchased with money stolen from the woman they were trying to kill. Guests wandered through exclaiming over the modern design. Gregory accepted congratulations with modest pride. Roxanne basked in the attention. They looked like Charleston's power couple. Desmond checked his watch. Federal agents are in position. 4 inside posing as guests, 3 outside monitoring exits. Banking fraud investigator, I asked. The one drinking champagne near the main desk. At 7:20 p.m., a black town car pulled to the entrance. 7:20 p.m., right on schedule. Ulysses Bishop emerged. Tall, distinguished, silver hair immaculate, carrying a leather portfolio. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a legitimate businessman with a legitimate opportunity. Completely unaware he was bait in a trap. Gregory spotted him immediately and rushed over. Hand extended, smile broad and genuine. "That's Ulysses Bishop," Stewart confirmed. Through the audio feed, I heard Gregory's enthusiastic greeting, the warmth in his voice as he welcomed his salvation. "Gregory looks like a kid on Christmas morning," Desmond observed. "He has no idea." "The contract is in that portfolio," Stewart said. $22 million investment opportunity that requires immediate wire transfer. Through the directional microphone, I heard Gregory's voice, warm and confident. "Mr. Bishop, thank you for coming. I've been looking forward to this partnership for weeks. Shall we discuss the contract in my private office?" Ulysses smiled and patted the leather portfolio. "I have everything ready for your signature. Mr. Stone, once you wire the initial investment, we can begin immediately." Stewart's hand hovered over the trigger switch that would activate the poison pill the moment Gregory initiated the transfer. Gregory and Ulysses disappeared into the private office. The directional microphones tracked them perfectly. The audio feed crackled to life as Gregory closed the private office door, his voice suddenly intimate and conspiratorial. "I appreciate you making time tonight, Ulysses. This partnership means more to me than you might realize." "I'm excited about the potential," Ulysses responded. "Your vision for medical services aligns perfectly with the waterfront development." A pause. Then Gregory's voice softened into something that sounded like genuine emotion. "Before we discuss the contract, I need to be transparent about my family situation. My mother's condition deteriorated rapidly over the past year, progressive dementia. The doctors say she won't recognize me in 6 months." "I'm sorry to hear that, Gregory. These situations are always difficult." "It's been heartbreaking, but we've taken the necessary legal steps." Gregory's voice carried practiced sadness. "The guardianship was finalized in March. I have full fiduciary authority over her estate, $32 million in assets." I sat perfectly still in the surveillance van, listening to my son describe my mental incompetence with the warmth and regret of a devoted caregiver. Stewart's hand tightened on his mouse, ready to activate tracking software the moment Gregory logged into the banking system. "That must be a tremendous responsibility," Ulysses said sympathetically. "It is, but it also provides capital flexibility for opportunities like yours. I'm prepared to invest $18 million tonight as primary capital." The number hung in the air. $18 million, more than half of what he claimed was his estate. "That's substantial," Ulysses said. "The contract specifies 40% equity for an $18 million initial investment. Are you certain you want to commit that level of capital?" "Completely certain. I've liquidated several properties recently and have the funds liquid and ready. We can execute the wire transfer within the hour." My son was describing my dementia to a stranger with the same warm concern he'd used telling me bedtime stories 30 years ago. "Let me walk you through the development timeline," Ulysses said. Papers rustled through the audio feed. Phase 1 breaks ground in July, projected completion in 18 months. Your equity stake entitles you to quarterly distributions from rental income, plus full ownership percentage when we sell the completed development. "The projected returns?" Gregory asked. "Conservative estimate, 40% over 3 years. Optimistic scenario, 65% if the Charleston waterfront market continues current trends." "Perfect," Gregory's voice carried satisfaction. "This is exactly the kind of stable, long-term investment my mother's estate needs. Even though she won't understand it anymore, I can ensure her assets are properly managed." I gripped Desmond's hand, my knuckles white. "He's calling it his money," I whispered. $32 million is his estate." Desmond squeezed back. "Let him finish. Bernice, we need the attempted transfer on record. $18 million. Wire transfer within the hour." "The wire instructions are in Section 7, Ulysses said through the speakers. "Once the funds clear, we'll process the equity documents and you'll be official partner. I'll initiate the transfer as soon as we sign. My banking system is secure on this computer." Stewart's fingers hovered over his keyboard. The poison pill trigger program ready. "Not yet. I said, my voice barely controlled. I know, but hearing him lie so smoothly about my dementia— He's signing his own arrest warrant, Stewart said quietly. Every word is being recorded. Every claim about guardianship, every reference to controlling your assets. When this goes to trial, the jury will hear all of it. Through the speakers, I heard paper rustling as Ulysses spread the contract on Gregory's desk. Sign here for the equity stake, Ulysses said, and here authorizing the wire transfer of $18 million. Pen clicked, paper whispered. My son was signing his name to fraud while I sat 300 yards away, gripping Desmond's hand hard enough to hurt, forcing myself to wait just a little longer. The waiting ended with 3 strokes of a pen. Gregory's signature flowed across the contract in bold strokes, the same handwriting that signed my birthday cards. Now committing felony fraud on legal paper. Through the audio feed, I heard pages turning as Gregory signed the second document, then the third. Each signature another count of fraud, another year of prison sentence. Excellent, Ulysses said warmly. Welcome to the partnership. Gregory, this development will transform Charleston's waterfront. I'm looking forward to it. Ulysses, $18 million is just the beginning of what I can invest. Once my mother's estate is fully settled, I'll have access to significantly more capital. More of my money, more plans to steal from the woman he thought was too demented to stop him. The contract specifies wire transfer tonight, Ulysses said. Shall we execute that now? Absolutely. Let me just— Paper rustled. My team needs confirmation of fund availability by midnight tonight. Not a problem, Gregory said confidently. I consolidated everything last week specifically for this opportunity. $18 million liquid and ready. Stewart pulled up tracking software on his laptop, watching for the moment Gregory logged into the banking system. The poison pill sat ready, a single keystroke away from activation. My son had just signed away his freedom with the same flourish he'd used on college loan documents, wedding licenses, birth certificates, the signature of a man who believed himself untouchable. Perfect, Ulysses said. If you can initiate the transfer now, we can have the development partnership operational by Monday. My accountants will process the equity documents over the weekend. In the surveillance van, I leaned forward until my forehead nearly touched the monitor, showing the remote view of Gregory's computer screen through Stewart's. Hacking software. He's accessing the laptop, Stewart whispered. Login screen loading. Through the audio feed, keyboard clicks echoed rapid, confident typing. Gregory entering passwords he believed secured millions of dollars that belonged to him. Let me pull up the corporate account. Gregory's voice came through clearly. Just need to authenticate. Take your time, Ulysses said. I'll send my accountant the wire confirmation as soon as it processes. More typing. A computer chime indicating successful login. Stewart's screen flickered, and suddenly we had direct view of Gregory's banking portal. Stone Family Holdings, LLC. Account summary loading. Here we are, Gregory said with satisfaction. Stone Family Holdings account. $18,200,000 current balance. $18,200,000. One click away. The screen showed exactly what Gregory expected, the full amount he'd stolen and fraudulently borrowed. Consolidated into a single account he believed he controlled completely. What he didn't know was that my biometric authentication was missing. What he didn't know was that Thomas had built walls he couldn't see. What he didn't know was that 300 yards away, his mother was watching every keystroke. Transferring to the escrow account you specified, Gregory said. $18 million even. Confirmed. Confirmed, Ulysses responded. Wire routing number and account number are in Section 12 of the contract. Desmond's hand found mine. Stewart's finger moved to the keyboard, ready to trigger the poison pill the millisecond Gregory clicked submit. On the screen, Gregory navigated to the wire transfer page, filled in the routing number, filled in the account number, entering the amount $18 million. The cursor moved toward the blue button labeled Initiate Wire Transfer. Gregory's cursor hovered over the button. In the surveillance van, Stewart's finger was on the poison pill trigger. The moment he clicks, Stewart whispered, every account locks. Bank fraud alerts activate. The FBI monitoring system flags the transaction. I watched my son's cursor move toward the button, watched 40 years of motherhood compress into this single moment of perfect justice. "Do it," I breathed. "Click it, Gregory." Gregory clicked. Gregory clicked Initiate Wire Transfer at 7:53 p.m., and I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner exactly 1 second later. "Thumbprint authenticated," Stewart whispered. "Poison pill activating now." On the surveillance screen showing Gregory's laptop, the banking portal flickered, then flashed red. Through the audio feed, Gregory's voice carried confusion. "What's happening? The screen just... everything's red." Error messages cascaded across his display. "Transaction denied. Fraud alert. Biometric authentication failure. Federal investigation triggered." Every account we'd identified in Stone Family Holdings LLC locked simultaneously. Checking accounts, savings accounts, investment portfolios, the fraudulent loan proceeds, all frozen in a single coordinated freeze. The wire transfer died mid-processing. "This must be a system error," Gregory said, his voice tighter now. "Let me try logging in again." Keyboard clicks came through the speakers, rapid and increasingly frantic. Another red screen, same error messages. "The system's completely locked," Gregory said. "Ulysses, I'm sorry, I don't understand what's happening." The message says, "Biometric authentication failure." Ulysses noted carefully. "Do you have two-factor enabled?" "I don't have two-factor. I never set that up. Someone's controlling my accounts." The moment of realization. The instant Gregory understood he'd never actually controlled those millions. 40 years I'd raised this man, nursed him through fevers and heartbreaks. And now I watched his face drain white with the same clinical detachment I'd once used assessing surgical patients. Gregory tried different access pathways: personal banking app on his phone, secondary login credentials, emergency backup authentication. Every attempt returned the same blazing red error screen. "It's locked," he said, voice rising toward panic. "Everything's locked. This has to be a system error." "Gregory," Ulysses said quietly, "the message specifically says federal investigation triggered. That's not a system error. That's a fraud alert." Silence on the audio feed. Then Gregory, very softly, "Someone knew. Someone was watching." Stewart checked his federal monitoring dashboard. FBI banking fraud system flagged the transaction automatically. Local PD dispatch shows 2 units en route. ETA, 90 seconds. Desmond made a call to the police coordinator. "This is Griffin, confirming you have the warrant package." Pause. "Excellent. Subject is in the private office, northeast corner of the building." Through the surveillance van window, I saw lights reflecting off buildings 3 blocks away. Red and blue lights, 3 blocks away, closing fast. "Sirens," Gregory's voice came through the speakers, tight with dread. "Do you hear sirens? Ulysses, someone called the police." "I hear them," Ulysses said. "Gregory, I think you need legal representation immediately." "I didn't do anything wrong. The money is mine. My mother gave me power of attorney. Everything was legal." But it wasn't. And now 2 police cruisers were pulling into the clinic parking lot, lights blazing, following by an unmarked black SUV with federal plates. Through the window, I could see Gregory's silhouette in his office window, pacing frantically, phone pressed to his ear. Roxanne appeared in the office doorway, diamond necklace catching the flashing police lights, her face a mask of confusion, transforming rapidly into comprehension. Stewart closed his laptop. Desmond gathered the evidence folders. I stood, legs steady, despite 6 weeks of planning compressing into this single moment. "Time to introduce myself," I said, opening the surveillance van door. The night air was cool against my face. Police radios crackled across the parking lot. Federal agents emerged from the black, SUV badges already visible. I walked toward the clinic entrance, toward my son who'd tried to kill me, toward the daughter-in-law who'd orchestrated it all, toward the public reckoning I'd spent 42 days engineering. Justice had arrived, and I intended to watch every second. I followed Stewart and Desmond toward the clinic entrance, federal agents flanking us. The moment we'd spent 6 weeks building had arrived. The gala music stopped mid-song when 6 officers in tactical vests pushed through the reception hall doors. Stuart Blanchard walking calmly behind them with a leather folder of warrants. Conversation died instantly. 200 guests in evening wear froze. Champagne glasses suspended mid-toast, canapes forgotten on elegant china. Stuart stepped forward, presenting documentation to the lead officer, a stern woman in her 40s, with federal banking investigator credentials visible on her belt. Federal and state warrants for Gregory Stone and Roxanne Marie Stone, the officer announced, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. Financial fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Gregory emerged from his private office into the main event space, drained of color. Roxanne appeared beside him, scanning the room for exits, calculating escape routes with the same cold efficiency she'd used planning my murder. "This is a mistake," Gregory said, voice shaking. "I'm the victim here. Someone hacked my accounts." "Gregory, what's happening?" Roxanne hissed. "Who called the police?" The lead officer moved forward, 2 colleagues flanking her. She held up the warrant documents Stuart had prepared. Charges include attempted murder through intentional poisoning, fraudulent medical documentation, theft exceeding $18 million, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Every word echoed through the reception hall, every crime detailed before Charleston's elite society. Phones appeared throughout the crowd, filming, recording, documenting the collapse of the Stone Aesthetic Center's golden couple. 200 Charleston Society members stood frozen, watching the golden couple of the cosmetic surgery world get handcuffed in their own reception hall. "Murder," Gregory's voice cracked. Roxanne, what did you do?" "Shut up, Gregory," Roxanne snapped, her mask of elegance shattering. "Don't say anything without a lawyer." But Gregory wasn't listening anymore. His eyes swept the crowd desperately, searching faces in the assembled witnesses. "Additional charges," the officer continued, reading from Stuart's comprehensive documentation, "include forging medical power of attorney documents, fraudulent loan acquisitions secured by stolen property, and administering controlled substances without medical license or consent." Ulysses Bishop stood near the champagne fountain, watching with grim recognition. He'd been the bait in a trap he hadn't known existed. Now he understood why the investment opportunity had required immediate wire transfer, why the timing had been so specific. Officers moved toward Gregory and Roxanne, handcuffs ready. "Mom?" Gregory called out suddenly, voice breaking with desperation. "Mom, I know you're here. Please, let me explain." His eyes continued scanning the crowd, searching for the confused elderly woman he believed he'd been poisoning for months. Handcuffs clicked, phones filmed, champagne spilled. "Gregory Stone, you have the right to remain silent," the officer said, securing the cuffs around his wrists. "I suggest you use it." "She did this," Gregory said, understanding flooding his face as he looked at the perfectly coordinated raid, the federal warrants, the biometric account locks. "My mother set this whole thing up." Roxanne's head snapped toward him, her eyes widening with the same realization. Not dementia, not confusion, not a helpless victim. A trap. "Mom?" Gregory called again, still searching the crowd. "Are you here? Please?" I stepped through the main entrance as Gregory was still calling for me, his voice breaking with desperation. The crowd parted. Our eyes met across the silent room filled with shocked witnesses. Recognition flooded his face, not the confused dementia patient he'd been poisoning, but his mother, fully present, fully aware, and utterly in control. "Hello, Gregory," I said clearly into the silent room. "I remember everything." The crowd waited for me to speak. Gregory waited. Roxanne waited. 200 witnesses holding their breath. The silence in the gala hall was absolute as I walked forward, my steps steady and sure, not the shuffle of a confused elderly woman, but the measured stride of a surgical nurse approaching the operating table. I stopped 10 feet from my handcuffed son. 3 weeks ago, I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the room, I learned you were poisoning me. Blood thinners to make me confused and weak. To make me sign documents I wouldn't understand. Gregory's face crumpled. Mom, please, let me explain. Roxanne made me. I've been aware every single day. Gregory, watching you, recording you, building the case that puts you in prison. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones shifted, capturing different angles. You called me confused, I continued. You told Ulysses Bishop tonight that I have progressive dementia, that doctors say I won't recognize you in 6 months. I turned slightly, addressing the assembled guests. I'm 65 years old. I spent 37 years as a cardiac surgical nurse at Charleston Medical Center. I have no dementia, no confusion. My mind is perfectly clear and has been the entire time my son and daughter-in-law were planning to murder me. Roxanne's face had gone white, her diamond necklace catching the police lights still flashing outside. Every time I fumbled with my phone, I said, turning back to Gregory, I was recording you. Every confused question was a trap. Every moment you thought you were manipulating a helpless old woman, I was documenting evidence. I thought you loved me, Gregory whispered. I'm your son. The pain in his voice almost broke me. Almost. I'd given this man life, nursed him through childhood illnesses, celebrated his wedding, held his daughter, and he'd calculated how much my death was worth. You're my son who tried to murder me for $18 million, I said quietly, while your daughter slept upstairs. While Catalina went to school not knowing her parents were poisoning her grandmother. Catalina's sob carried from somewhere in the crowd. The guardianship documents were forged, I continued. The power of attorney was fraudulent. The loan against my coastal resort secured through documents I never signed. Every dollar you spent building this clinic was stolen from me while you slowly killed me with prescription blood thinners. Mom, I never wanted to actually hurt you. You administered poison, I said, my voice hardening, for weeks, deliberately, calculating dosages to incapacitate without raising immediate suspicion. How do you poison your own mother and still call yourself her son? 30 years I spent saving hearts in cardiac surgery, I said. Thousands of them. Families in their worst moments trusting me to help them survive. You grew up hearing those stories, Gregory. You knew what that work meant to me. I know. You forgot I saved thousands of hearts. Gregory. My voice broke slightly, the first crack in my composure. You forgot I knew exactly what you were doing to mine. Silence fell again, heavy with the weight of betrayal fully exposed. Catalina broke through the crowd and stopped between us, tears streaming down her face, looking from me to her handcuffed father. Grandma, she whispered, I recorded them for you. I gave you the evidence. I reached for her hand, pulling my granddaughter close. Then Roxanne's voice cut through the silence, cold and sharp. The syndicate is here. They're watching this. And at midnight, they won't care who goes to prison.
Someone still owes them $620,000.
The syndicate's representatives had watched from the back of the gala hall. Stewart identified them immediately, and federal agents detained them for questioning about interstate racketeering. 3 hours later, we were in an interrogation room. The interrogation room at 11:47 p.m. was fluorescent lit and cold, and my son looked smaller in handcuffs than I'd ever seen him. Roxanne sat across from him. Diamond necklace confiscated, mascara smeared from crying. Stewart stood near the door with the detective, both holding evidence folders. Before anyone could begin official questioning, Gregory started talking. Roxanne planned everything, he said, words tumbling out desperately. The forged documents, the corrupt doctor, the gambling debts, all her. I just did what she told me. Roxanne's head snapped toward him, disbelief flooding her face. Gregory, you coward, you're going to blame me when you signed every document. She threatened to take Catalina away if I didn't help her, Gregory continued, ignoring his wife's fury. I was trying to protect my daughter. Everything I did was to keep my family together. I sat perfectly still, watching my son throw his wife to federal prosecutors to save himself. Protect her, Roxanne's voice rose. You were stealing from your own mother. Don't pretend this was noble. You're the one with gambling debts, Gregory shot back. You're the one who got us into this. I'd thought the hardest moment would be watching my son get arrested. I was wrong. The hardest moment was watching him betray his wife to save himself while pretending it was for his daughter. Roxanne stopped attacking Gregory and turned to me, her voice breaking. "Bernice, please. I know I deserve prison, but Catalina is 17. She needs one parent." The desperate plea of a mother caught between justice and her child. "You used my granddaughter as collateral with a gambling syndicate," I said quietly. I was desperate, stupid, but I love her. Roxanne's tears were real now, not performance. "Let Gregory go. I'll take all the charges. I'll plead guilty to everything. Just give her one parent who isn't in prison." Gregory's face shifted, recognizing opportunity. "Mom, if Roxanne's willing to take responsibility." "Be quiet," I said. Stuart moved forward, setting an envelope on the table between them. "This is evidence number 7, I said. Your daughter recorded you both for 2 weeks. Gregory's face went white. "Catalina. She heard everything. Catalina recorded them. For 2 weeks. Every word. She heard you express reluctance about institutionalizing me," I said to Gregory. "She heard Roxanne manipulate you with threats about losing your daughter. She heard both of you planning fraud, discussing timelines, coordinating with Dr. Padilla." Roxanne closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming. "She gave me the recordings," I continued, "because she knew something was wrong and wanted to protect me. Your 17-year-old daughter became a witness against her own parents." Stuart opened a second folder. "The syndicate debt is resolved," he said professionally. "We seized your Savannah property and the LLC assets to pay them. They're leaving Catalina alone. No retaliation, no threats. That danger is over." Some of the tension left Roxanne's shoulders, but the criminal charges remain. Stuart continued. "Attempted murder through poisoning, elder abuse, fraud totaling over $20 million, conspiracy, forgery, multiple federal and state felonies." I stood, the envelope still on the table between them. Gregory reached for it with cuffed hands, but I pulled it back. "You want to know what happens now?" I asked quietly. "The prosecutor is waiting in the next room. Stuart has a deal to offer, but only one of you gets it." I looked at my son, then at my daughter-in-law. Choose who loves Catalina more. They couldn't decide. Gregory claimed he loved Catalina more. Roxanne begged to take the deal. Both wanted to be the martyr. Neither wanted to face decades in prison. The prosecutor took them both to separate holding cells to consider overnight. Stuart handed me coffee at 8 a.m. and said the words that changed everything I thought I knew about my investigation. "Bernice?" They were already caught. I set down the coffee cup. "What?" "The bank flagged the $18 million loan the day it was filed. Their fraud division opened an investigation March 3rd. March 3rd. That's before I even knew I was being poisoned," I said slowly. Stuart pulled a thick folder from his briefcase and slid it across the conference room table. "First Charleston Bank, Fraud Investigation Division, case number FC-2026-0847. I opened it. The first page was dated March 3, 2026, 2 weeks before Nora ran my blood tests. 3 weeks before I discovered the anticoagulant poisoning. The signatures on the loan documents didn't match their files, Stuart explained. They knew someone was forging your authorization the moment Gregory submitted the paperwork. Standard protocol triggered an immediate fraud investigation. I flipped through pages of forensic document analysis, handwriting comparison charts, signature authentication reports. Professional investigators had been examining the same crimes I'd been discovering, but from a completely different angle. "This file is dated March 3rd, I said, still processing. "I didn't run my first blood test until March 18th. "The bank had handwriting experts, forensic accountants, corporate investigators," Stuart said, "all working independently of us. They were building a criminal referral package to submit to the FBI. I'd spent 6 weeks thinking I was the hunter, setting the perfect trap, when the truth was they'd walked into quicksand the moment they forged my signature on that loan. By mid-April, they'd identified Gregory and Roxanne and were drafting criminal referrals to the FBI. Stuart continued. The bank's legal team was preparing to freeze all transactions and notify law enforcement. So everything I did, I stopped, looking at the evidence folders I'd compiled, the surveillance footage, Catalina's recordings, Dr. Padilla's confession, the poison pill freeze. The surveillance, the poison pill, the gala trap, they were already caught. Not exactly, Stewart said carefully. The bank investigation would have caught the fraud. They would have faced charges for forging documents, securing loans through false pretenses, maybe theft. 5 to 10 years each, possibly less with plea deals. He tapped my evidence folders. Your investigation added the attempted murder and elder abuse charges, the poisoning, the systematic abuse. Those are federal crimes with 20-year minimums. Without you, they'd only face fraud. Had any of my careful planning mattered? Or was I just documenting crimes that were already being prosecuted? But the money, I asked. The $18 million, the coastal resort property. They never had a chance to keep it. The bank was already closing in. Every transaction was being monitored. The wire transfer Gregory attempted Friday night. Even without your poison pill, the bank would have flagged it for immediate review. I sat back, letting the implications settle. My elaborate trap. 6 weeks of careful evidence gathering, the surveillance van, the gala confrontation. All of it had been running parallel to an official investigation that would have caught them anyway. You accelerated the timeline, Stewart said gently, and you ensured they face appropriate consequences for trying to kill you, not just steal from you. That matters, Bernice. Maybe it did. Maybe documenting the poisoning, the cruelty, the calculated attempt on my life, maybe that transformed fraud into something that would be properly punished. Stewart closed the bank's file and pulled out a second folder, this one thinner. There's something else, he said quietly. The bank investigation would have caught the fraud. Your investigation caught the poisoning, but there's a third investigation you don't know about yet. He slid the folder across the table. The tab read, Stone, Catalina M., Witness Protection Application. Desmond spread the trust documents across his mahogany desk like a surgeon laying out instruments. These are irrevocable. Bernice, once you sign, there's no changing your mind. I'd made irreversible decisions before, during 23 years of cardiac surgery. I'd clamped arteries and cut tissue, knowing there was no going back. This felt similar, except the life I was protecting was my granddaughter's. Walk me through it again, I said. He adjusted his reading glasses. $5 million in an irrevocable trust for Catalina Stone. Funds distributed according to this schedule. College tuition and living expenses immediately available. Graduate school funding at age 22. Full access to remaining principal at age 30. Medical care and emergencies covered at trustee discretion until then. And Stewart Blanchard remains as trustee. Yes, he'll manage the investments, approve distributions, ensure Catalina's protected even if, he paused delicately, even if family circumstances change, even if Gregory gets out of prison and comes looking for money, even if Roxanne somehow manipulates her daughter from behind bars. The unspoken threats hung in the October air. What about the witness protection application? I asked. Desmond's expression softened. Catalina withdrew it last week. She's staying in Charleston, enrolled at the nursing program. She wants to be near you. Something cracked in my chest. Not the physical pain I'd endured during 18 months of poisoning, but something deeper. My 17-year-old granddaughter had chosen me over federal protection, had chosen to stay in a city where her parents' arrest had made headlines, where everyone knew her father had tried to murder her grandmother. Then this trust needs to be bulletproof, I said firmly. Gregory and Roxanne can't touch it. Ever. They can't. Legally. Structurally. Practically impossible. Desmond slid the signature pages toward me. $5 million securing Catalina's future. Your husband Thomas would have wanted this. I signed with the same precision I'd once used placing sutures around damaged hearts. Bernice L. Stone in my surgical script, dated October 23, 2024. Desmond witnessed, then looked at me carefully. There's one more trust document to consider. He pulled a thinner folder from his briefcase. $50,000 for Gregory Stone. Prison commissary account and post-release support fund. Managed by an independent trustee, not Stewart, someone with no connection to the inheritance dispute. I stared at the document. 50,000. Less than 0.1% of what Gregory had tried to steal. Barely enough to buy decent prison canteen food and maybe 6 months of rent when he got out. You're asking if I want to provide for my son, I said slowly. The son who poisoned me for 18 months. I'm asking if you want to ensure he doesn't come out of prison with absolutely nothing. Desmond corrected. 50,000 won't give him a comfortable life. It'll keep him from being completely desperate. The pattern interrupt hit me viscerally. Was I the kind of mother who could sign away $5 million for my granddaughter while signing nothing for my own child? Even after everything Gregory had done, even knowing he'd measured out rivaroxaban doses with the intent to kill me, could I completely abandon him? I need time, I said. Desmond nodded, leaving the Gregory Trust unsigned on his desk. Take all the time you need. The Catalina Trust is complete. That's what matters most. I gathered my purse, my copy of Catalina's trust documents, the weight of the decision I'd made, and the decision I was avoiding. Could you be the grandmother who saved one generation while abandoning another? Could you protect your son's daughter while destroying your son? Through the window, I could see Catalina's car pulling into the parking lot. She was coming to thank me for the trust. Unaware, I was deciding whether to completely abandon her father. I didn't sign the $50,000 trust for Gregory. Instead, I picked up the pen and reached for the documents that would sever him completely from our family's legal existence. These are the final modifications, Desmond said quietly, sliding a thicker folder across his desk. Are you certain? Yes. He opened to the first document. This removes Gregory completely from your will and Thomas's remaining estate distributions. Everything originally designated for him. Every dollar, every asset. Every bequest now flows to Catalina's trust, or the charitable organizations you've selected. I scanned the legal language, seeing my son's name systematically erased. Gregory Stone, eliminated from beneficiary lists. Gregory Stone, removed from contingent distributions. Gregory Stone, excluded from all future estate considerations. Upon your death, he receives $0. Desmond continued. Thomas's legacy skips him entirely. Do you understand the finality? I understand. My voice was steady, betraying nothing. Everything that was his goes to Catalina and charity. Everything. I signed the first document with my surgical script, precise and irreversible. Bernice L. Stone, dated May 18, 2026. Desmond produced the next set of papers. These revoke any medical power of attorney or emergency authorization Gregory might claim as next of kin. Under standard law, as your son, he'd have standing to make medical decisions if you're incapacitated. The irony hit me with physical force. The man who'd poisoned me for 18 months, who'd measured rivaroxaban doses with intent to kill, would normally have legal authority over my medical care. After he poisoned me, he gets no say in my medical care, I said firmly. Ever. You're appointing me as primary medical proxy, Catalina as secondary. Gregory is explicitly excluded from receiving information about your condition, visiting you in any medical facility, or making any treatment decisions on your behalf. I signed each page methodically. My hand was steady, my signature clear. 40 years of motherhood, reduced to legal exclusions and revocations. Signed in blue ink on cream-colored paper in an attorney's office on a Wednesday afternoon. Desmond placed the final document before me. The header read, Formal Severance of Parental Legal Ties. This is the comprehensive severance, he explained. After you sign, Gregory Stone is removed from all family legal structures, inheritance, medical authority, emergency contact designations, estate trustee considerations, in every legal context that matters. He ceases to be your son. He's still my son, I said quietly, just not legally. Yes. I picked up the pen. Each signature had been a door closing, a bridge burning, a cord cutting, until the only connection left was biology and memory. The pen touched paper. My hand trembled. It was slight, barely visible, but Desmond noticed. He said nothing, simply waited as I forced my hand steady enough to complete the signature. The tremor betrayed what my voice never would, that severing my son from my legal life carried a cost that no amount of justified anger could erase. Your hand is shaking, Bernice. I'm aware. I finished the signature and set the pen down. The documents were complete. Gregory was erased from every legal structure that bound us as family. I'd protected Catalina's future, secured my own medical autonomy, ensured that the man who'd tried to murder me would never profit from my death. It felt like victory and devastation simultaneously. Desmond gathered the signed documents silently, witnessing the slight tremor in my hand that betrayed what my voice never would. The door opened behind us. Grandma, Catalina's voice was soft, uncertain. I saw you didn't sign the trust for Dad. I wanted to say thank you for choosing me. I turned to face my granddaughter, my hand still shaking, and wondered if she understood I hadn't chosen her over Gregory. I'd chosen justice over mercy, and it was destroying me. The judge's gavel struck at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday in June, and my son's freedom ended with a sound like a door closing forever. 3 weeks had passed since Catalina thanked me in Desmond's office. 3 weeks of pre-sentencing reports and victim impact statements and legal motions that meant nothing because the outcome was never in doubt. Now Judge Harriet Caldwell, a woman with 23 years on the bench and a reputation for maximum sentences in elder abuse cases, looked down from her position of authority at my son and daughter-in-law. Gregory Allen Stone, she said, her voice carrying the weight of finality. You are hereby sentenced to 18 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 12 years. Gregory stood motionless. No emotion crossed his face. Roxanne Marie Stone, you are hereby sentenced to 22 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Roxanne remained equally blank, her courtroom mask perfect. All assets obtained through fraudulent means are hereby ordered seized and returned to the victim. Bernice Elizabeth Stone. Judge Caldwell's eyes found mine across the courtroom. Mrs. Stone, the court recognizes the extraordinary trauma you've endured. Justice, though late, has been served. I nodded once, unable to speak. 18 years meant Gregory would be 63 when released. Older than I was now. Older than his father lived to be. Roxanne would be 67. They'd serve their sentences in separate federal facilities, never seeing each other again, except perhaps in appeals court. Judge Caldwell turned to the gallery. Catalina Marsh, age 17, will complete her final year of high school under guardianship of the state, with permanent placement approved for her maternal grandmother, Bernice Stone. I looked across the courtroom to where Catalina sat beside Rebecca Hollis, the 42-year-old state-appointed social worker who'd been overseeing her transition. Rebecca had kind eyes and steady hands, the kind of professional who understood that sometimes the best thing you could do for a child was help them survive their parents. Catalina's face was blank, processing the reality that both her parents would be in prison until she was nearly 40. Our eyes met. She mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Judge Caldwell concluded the formalities, restitution schedules, no contact orders, appeal timelines, and declared court adjourned. The gavel struck again at 2:53 p.m. Court officers moved toward Gregory and Roxanne to escort them to separate holding cells. Gregory turned as the officer reached for his arm. Mom. His voice cracked across the courtroom. Please, just look at me. Mom. I stood slowly, my surgical training keeping my movements controlled and precise. Catalina appeared beside me, having crossed from the gallery. Rebecca stayed back, understanding this moment belonged to family. Grandma, he's calling you, Catalina whispered. I know, sweetheart. I took her hand. Keep walking. Mom, please, Gregory's voice rose, desperate now as the officer guided him toward the door. I'm still your son. Look at me. Catalina's hand tightened in mine. Her 17-year-old fingers, so like her grandfather's long and capable, squeezed once, giving me permission, or seeking it. I wasn't sure which. I walked toward the courtroom exit. My steps were steady and sure. Behind us, Gregory's voice continued calling, Mom, Mom. until a door closed and cut off the sound. Catalina walked beside me, matching my pace through the gallery, past the bar, toward the double doors that led to the hallway and the courthouse steps and the rest of our lives. "You didn't look back," she whispered as we reached the exit. "Not even once." The courthouse doors closed behind us. Afternoon sunlight harsh after fluorescent courtroom lighting. June heat washing over us like absolution or judgment. I couldn't tell which. Catalina squeezed my hand. "You didn't look back," she repeated. I stopped on the courthouse steps, feeling the warmth soak into my skin, and realized this was the moment I'd been walking toward for 6 weeks. Not the gala, not the arrest, not even the sentencing. This moment, choosing to walk forward with my granddaughter instead of backward to my son. 1 month after the courthouse, I signed my name to documents that felt like healing instead of judgment. A $3 million donation establishing the Thomas Stone Dementia Research Fund. We gathered in a Charleston Medical Center conference room on a Thursday morning in July, the air conditioning humming quietly as hospital administrators spread the endowment papers across the table. Nora Patterson sat beside me, her presence a reminder of how this journey began, with blood tests and rivaroxaban levels, and a nurse who believed an old woman when she said something was wrong. The Thomas Stone Dementia Research Fund will support clinical trials and patient care in perpetuity. Dr. Marcus Whitfield, the hospital's development director, explained, "Your generosity will directly impact hundreds of patients and their families." Nora touched my hand. "They faked your dementia to steal your money," she said quietly. "Now that money fights real dementia." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The diagnosis Gregory and Roxanne fabricated, the medical lie they used to justify poisoning me, now funded actual research to save real dementia patients. $3 million turning cruelty into cure. Thomas would have loved the irony, I said, and the purpose. I signed the endowment papers with the same precision I'd once used for surgical sutures, for trust documents, for legal severances. But this signature felt different. Not an ending, but a beginning. That evening, Catalina and I sat on the porch of our coastal home, watching the sun paint the harbor in shades of amber and rose. 6 months ago, I'd sat on this same porch suspecting my son was poisoning me. Now I sat here knowing I'd survived him, saved my granddaughter, and turned their cruelty into charity. "Duke offered me a volleyball scholarship," Catalina said, her voice carrying the careful hope of someone who'd learned to measure joy against loss. "Full ride, pre-med track. Your grandfather went to Duke." The memory settled warm in my chest. He'd be so proud. "Are you okay, Grandma?" She turned to face me, her 17-year-old eyes holding wisdom no teenager should need. "Really okay?" I looked out at the water, the same view I'd seen that January morning when I first understood my son was trying to kill me. The ocean hadn't changed. The sunset looked the same. But I was different, transformed by survival, by choice, by the knowledge that I'd fought for my life and won. "Yes," I said, "I'm really okay." For the first time since January, I felt completely safe in my own home. No more measuring coffee for poison. No more analyzing Sunday dinners for signs of tampering. No more wondering if my son's next visit would be my last. "They thought being old meant being helpless," I said quietly. They were wrong. Catalina leaned against my shoulder the way she had when she was small, before her parents' greed destroyed their family. "You saved yourself, Grandma, and me. We saved each other, sweetheart." The sun slipped below the horizon, darkness settling soft and complete. Stars emerged one by one, the same stars that had witnessed 18 months of poisoning, 6 weeks of investigation, and now this moment of hard-won peace. The sunset looked the same as it had in January, but I was watching it with different eyes, the eyes of someone who'd died and chosen to live anyway. "Old age is when you finally know who to trust," I said, "and who to fight." Catalina's breathing slowed into sleep against my shoulder, her trust as complete as it had been when she was small enough to fit in my arms. The ocean whispered against the shore, the same sound it had made the morning I first tasted poison in my coffee. the same sound it would make long after I was gone. But tonight, I wasn't thinking about death or betrayal or even justice. I was thinking about how old age finally teaches you the only thing worth knowing: who deserves your heart and who only wanted your money. And to you, listening to my story, remember this: the people closest to you can sometimes be the greatest threat to your safety and peace. Looking back, I see the warning signs I chose to ignore: the sudden interest in my finances, the insistence on helping with my medications, the convenient concern about my memory. I told myself it was love, that families take care of each other. Don't make my mistake. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even when it's your own child making you question yourself. I learned that being old doesn't mean being helpless. Your age is not a weakness. It's wisdom, experience, survival. When someone tries to make you doubt your own mind, remember that you know your body better than anyone. I believe God gave me the strength and clarity to see the truth when I needed it most. My medical training helped, but it was faith and determination that carried me through 18 months of deception to the moment of justice. Never let anyone convince you that aging means you've lost your power to fight back. If my story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to stand up to family? What would you have done in my position? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories about justice, survival, and the strength it takes to protect yourself, please subscribe. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time and attention are precious to me. One final note: while this story contains fictionalized elements for storytelling purposes, the lessons about trust, family, and self-protection are very real. May you never need them, but may you always remember them.